Chapter 304. On the flat ground that was rolled back and forth by the road roller, all the members of the 8th Squad were lined up with serious expressions. They stood there waiting for the 8th Squad's captain, Shiro Amada's speech. Today was the day that the 8th Squad welcomed a new teammate again. Although the 8th Squad was already fully staffed before this, no one knew what kind of logic the higher-ups had in mind. The 5th Squad, which was already in a state of reconstruction, was directly merged with the 6th Squad and reorganized into a special mixed squadron directly under the captain, Xiao Dao. In addition to this special mixed squadron, the entire mechanical mixed brigade seemed to be ushering in a major reorganization. In this wave, the 8th Squad could be said to have the slightest change. Only a new pilot and marine guide was assigned to enhance the 8th Squad's strength in future special missions. On this point, as long as one was not blind, one would know that the 8th Squad was about to face a serious and dangerous mission. Ahem. Shiro Amada, who stood in front of everyone, suddenly coughed a few times. The corner of his mouth moved, and he said loudly, "They're here. Let's give a round of applause to the new members of our 8th Squad." Amidst the applause brought by Shiro Amada, an acquaintance walked over from a distance. His appearance made Shiro Amada's expression a little unnatural, but in the end he endured it. "I'm Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai. From today onwards, please take care of me." The person who came was Rei Minkai. It turned out that the new deployment order mentioned by the captain, Xiao Dao, was to make Rei Minkai the 4th Marine Gauda in the 8th Squad. Of course, at the same time that Rei Minkai was assigned to the 8th Squad, Marine No. 3 Gauda, who he used in the 6th Squad, was also transferred to the 8th Squad. Moreover, in order to make up for the power vacuum caused by the transfer of Marine No. 3 Gauda, the headquarters heroically assigned the 5th Squad, which was still in a state of reconstruction, directly to the 6th Squad. This operation made Rei Minkai speechless, but at the same time, he also felt a sense of urgency. More and more outliers appeared in places that he couldn't see, and they quickly affected the direction of the world. The more it was like this, the more Rei Minkai felt that the timeline that he could still control might collapse. Cough, cough. This was Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai. From today onwards, he is a member of our 8th Squad. I hope everyone will take good care of Second Lieutenant Rei Minkai in the future. Those above are dismissed. Interestingly, when Rei Minkai was a little distracted, Shiro Amada, who was supposed to give a speech to motivate everyone, simply left a few words and ran away. Looking at Shiro Amada's slightly flustered back, everyone who was still acting solemnly suddenly burst into laughter. Rei Minkai, who had regained his senses, couldn't help but smile. There was no other reason. The reason why Shiro Amada had fled in such a flustered manner. It was a video that the old quartermaster had made when he pulled Rei Minkai, Karen, and the others over. The content of the video could be put aside for now, but at the end of the video, there was a highlight that had to be mentioned. That was, in the last 30 seconds of the video, Shiro Amada actually put down the book in his hand, took out the clock pendant hanging around his neck, and showed a thoughtful look. The moment the beautiful pendant appeared, except for Sandus, everyone's gossipy heart suddenly burned. Therefore, Shiro Amada discovered that he was secretly photographed without knowing when... Cough, cough. Okay, everyone, stop laughing at the captain. After all, the captain is also at that age. Rei Minkai, who knew who the owner of the pendant was, spoke up to exonerate Shiro Amada. Unexpectedly, the raging fire of gossip had been burned on him. "Oh, it sounds like you are very experienced, Second Lieutenant. I wonder if the Second Lieutenant also has a sweetheart?" Eladoya strode to Rei Minkai's side and hugged Rei Minkai tightly. Although Rei Minkai's current identity was a Second Lieutenant, due to the previous interview, the soldiers in the station did not feel alienated from Rei Minkai. Instead, they would joke with him from time to time. This was also the reason why Eladoya dared to mess around with Rei Minkai in front of everyone. "Sweetheart?" "Yes." "Eladoya, aren't you the same?" Rei Minkai smiled slightly, and when he answered simply, he kicked the football back. The effect was remarkable. The moment the football was kicked back, Eladoya's gaze seemed to be a little weak, and he even subconsciously stole a glance at Karen. Then, he laughed heartily and began to meditate. Of course I have a sweetheart. Listen to me. She is an awe-inspiring and valiant woman. Oh, she sounds like a very good woman. I wonder which woman you have such a high opinion of, Eladoya. Raymond Kai's lips curled up slightly, revealing a meaningful look. At this moment, Eladoya was silent. It seemed that Eladoya did not have the courage to kick the football, let alone shoot the goal. Let's not talk about Eladoya. Second Lieutenant, what about you? I, on the other hand, am more interested in your sweetheart. Unexpectedly, while Eladoya was silent, Karen suddenly said something. Ray Minkai was stunned, and then he smiled calmly. My sweetheart? Fine. Actually, it's not a big deal. She is a kind and beautiful woman, and at the same time, she is also the princess that I will protect for the rest of my life. Your Highness? It seems that you have a very high opinion of your sweetheart. Sir Knight, Eladoya opened his mouth. It was just that he simply thought that the princess that Ray Minkai mentioned was only in the eye of the beholder. On this point, Karen, and even Sandus and Negeri, who remained silent, also thought the same. In this regard, Ray Minkai did not explain further. It was a misunderstanding. Then, Sir Knight, are you ready to go? I believe that there will soon be a mission for Squad 8. Since Shiro Amada had slipped away, the responsibility of arranging the team's affairs naturally fell on Karen's shoulders. On standby. Also, I hope that everyone could call me by my name. Ray Minkai raised his hand and saluted. While expressing his determination, he did not forget to correct the way everyone addressed him. Okay, then, Kai, please advise me in the future. It seemed that more than half a month had passed since the last heavy rain. During this period, Ray Minkai was ordered to be transferred to Squad 8 and became one of Shiro Amada's team members. Later, after accepting the mission to investigate the secret weapon of the Gion army, he followed Squad 8 to the depths of the tropical rainforest. Soon, with the help of advanced mechanized equipment, everyone who entered the depths of the rainforest was about to complete a journey through the rainforest. Of course, accompanying them was the guide team, led by Chi-Chi. Ray Minkai had forgotten about this female supporting character who had a considerable role in the original work, but when he saw her appear with the guide team, Ray Minkai could not help but shake his head. This girl's unrequited love is probably going to be wasted. Shiro, according to the information provided by our companions, not long ago, a flash of light suddenly appeared in the sky, and then a sudden burst of flames drowned that place. Chi-Chi, who was standing on the cliff and talking to the shepherd boy who was pointing at the desert in the distance for a while, brought back a piece of information. Without thinking, Ray Minkai knew that this should be the latest version of Apsara's 2. Ray Minkai was not surprised by this expected answer, but he was also surprised. What was not surprising was that some things finally went according to the original plan. What was surprising was that the appearance of Apsara's 2 seemed to be a bit early. But when he thought about the outliers, including himself, this might be a reasonable and unexpected result. Kai, what do you think? Raising the binoculars and looking at the bottomless canyon in the distance, Shiro Amada's face was solemn. This was Ray Minkai's first mission after joining Squad 8. After staying in the harsh rainforest for a while, everyone felt the difficulty of this mission more and more. Let's go check out first. If we just stand here and look with the binoculars, we won't be able to see anything. Ray Minkai put down the binoculars in his hand and looked back at Marine Gouda, who was half kneeling behind him. At this moment, Marine Gouda no longer had the number 06 on it. Instead, it was replaced by the number 08 painted on the shield. And its number in Squad 8 was Marine Gouda number 4, known as Meteor. This name was given by Eladoya when he pointed at the meteor hammer held by Gouda number 4. Although it was a bit reckless, it was unanimously approved by everyone. Therefore, Marine Gouda number 4 had a code name Meteor. That's true. Kai, take your Meteor. Let's go. Shiro Amada also had the same idea, so after the two reached an agreement, Squad 8 immediately changed from resting to mobile. However, after leaving the rainforest, Marine Gauda's condition seemed to be a bit bad. It was sand. Even if it was a seemingly calm desert, countless sand could inadvertently slip through the gaps in the dust barrier, which greatly affected the efficiency of Marine Gauda's operation. Quack, 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 quack. With a difficult whine, Shiro Amada helplessly patted the console in front of him, then opened the communication channel. Karen, Kai, Sandals, you go first. Let Eladoya and Michael stay to help me. You're here again? Captain, your Marine Gauda seems to be at odds with this desert. Ray Minkai shook his head and couldn't help but tease Shiro Amada. Perhaps it was fate, but no matter how well prepared they were before they set off, Shiro Amada still failed in the areas where he should have failed. The only difference was that there were a lot more preparations to deal with emergencies. Sigh, it seems like it. Kai, you go first. There's not much time left. Under Shiro Amada's urging, the three Marine Gauda driven by Ray Minkai, Karen, and Sandals walked towards the canyon first. Captain, it should be okay, right? His airframe seems to be prone to failure. Karen raised her hand and pressed a row of buttons on the right side. While looking at the data fed back on the screen, she said, No, Captain's luck has always been good. It will be fine. As someone who had been saved by Shiro Amada many times, Sandals was confident that Shiro Amada would not stop there. Leave the captain's side to them. Now it's our turn. While Ray Minkai was speaking, the three Marine Gauda also came to the canyon. I'll go down. You guys watch. As soon as Karen opened her mouth, she volunteered to snatch the spot for homework reduction. Sandals had no objection. Ray Minkai was even more indifferent. After a while, Karen, who had tied the safety cable, stepped on the hook with one foot in the air, and one hand holding the steel cable, and gestured to Sandals. Sandals, who understood, immediately began the descent operation so that Karen could land on the edge of the rock formation with evidence as soon as possible. Unlike the Busy Two, although Ray Minkai did not participate in the landing operation, he did not need to do anything at the moment. Therefore, while Ray Minkai was on guard against the surroundings, several patterns that Shiro Amada and the others had never seen before appeared on the screen in front of Ray Minkai. This was a comparison diagram made by the engineering team for the high-power energy output device and the mysterious device dug out from the metal lump. Below these comparison diagrams, there was a line diagram that constantly fluctuated up and down. This was the radar designed and built by the engineering team overnight. Although it was not very reliable due to time, it was already able to meet the basic requirements for detecting the surrounding energy fluctuations. Beep, beep. Suddenly, the line diagram displayed on the radar fluctuated sharply. It seemed that something was surging nearby. Apsilus 2? How is that possible? Apsilus 2 hasn't come here yet. In confusion, Karen's words solved this confusion. Kai, Sandals, there's a large area of vitrification below here. It seems to have been burned by a high-temperature object. Vitrification? This answer was not surprising. Apsilus 2 really came here, and it carried out a weapon test, just like in the original history. Captain Shiro, your wife is coming. Ray Minkai landed on the ground from Gauda's cockpit, stretched his head out to look at the burn marks on the rock walls on both sides, and couldn't help but sigh. At this time, with the help of Eladoya and Neguri, Shiro Amada, who finally repaired the fault of Gauda, also came here. At the same time, behind Gauda, there's also a guide team led by Chi-Chi. Kai, Karen, Sandals, how is it? As soon as he came to the edge of the canyon, Shiro Amada immediately asked, Maybe we have found the right place. Captain, what you have been waiting for is about to happen. With that said, Ray Minkai added another sentence. Captain, this may be a good thing in various senses. Chapter 305. John's secret base, underground hangar. Aina, with a tired face, walked down from the cockpit of Apsurus. Before she could take off her helmet, she was stopped by Kineas, who came up to greet her. Aina, how's the situation? Kineas's eyes flashed with an imperceptible concern, but Aina, who took off her helmet, didn't see it. She just nodded slightly. The operation is normal. The energy output is stable. To be honest, this is more stable than the previous reactor. Brother, it seems that Apsaras can advance to the next stage. Uh-huh. I know that. What I want to know now is, Aina, is there any discomfort in your body? But Kineas didn't care about this. As the designer of Apsaras, he naturally knew the limits of what the current Apsaras could reach. The only thing he cared about was whether the V-engine secretly transported by the mysterious Miss Q would have any adverse effects on Aina. Body? Aina was taken aback. She subconsciously raised her hand and shook her head. No, my body is fine. At this time, before Kineas could speak, a lazy voice sounded. What disappointment. I didn't expect Major General Kineas to be such a suspicious man. You know, this kind of man isn't liked by too many women. Miss Q. When he heard this voice, Kineas's face changed. Then he showed a respectful expression. He turned and bowed in the direction of the voice. Good afternoon. Miss Q. Good afternoon. Major General Kineas. Under Ina's gaze, a tall woman in a John military uniform leaned against the door and looked over with a smile. As if she noticed Ina's gaze, the woman with long flame-like hair also looked at Ina and took the initiative to give a friendly greeting. Good afternoon. You're Major General Kineas' sister, Ina Sakhaline, right? Nice to meet you. I'm Miss Q. I'm very sorry. For some reason, I can't disclose my real name. Miss Q. In fact, Ina had heard of this rather strange name from Kenya's when the latest model of Apsalas had gone offline. However, Ina didn't think too much about it. She didn't even think about it. This was because she knew that this woman, who was only known as Miss, was the key to the success of Apsaras' plan after the X3 engine was lost. What? Does Miss Ina still find the name Miss Q unacceptable? Seeing the strange look that flashed across Ina's face, the fiery red woman just smiled faintly and said casually, No, that was rude of me. Miss Q, I'm Ina Sakhaline. First time meeting. It's a pleasure to meet you. At this moment, Ina fully displayed her manners as a young lady from a prestigious family. Even if the Sakhaline family only had Ina and Kineas, the two siblings left. With a smile, Miss Q extended her hand and shook Ina's hand. She then looked up at Apsalas, who was surrounded by many maintenance personnel who were carrying out maintenance and improvements according to the plan. Ina, is it okay to call you that? How does Apsaras feel about driving? Looks like this big guy is very heavy. Ina thought for a moment and then said, Actually, at the beginning, I had the same idea as Miss Q. But when I really drove it, I found that it was far more agile than I imagined. In addition, the new V engine has increased Apsara's mobility by at least 30%. Oh, if that's the case, I'm relieved. At least, the current Apsaras didn't disappoint Commander Kirian's expectations. Ina, you're tired too. Go back and rest. Miss Q nodded and agreed with Ina's opinion. She also advised Ina to rest appropriately. Ina glanced at Kineas and found that her brother had the same opinion. She nodded obediently and turned to leave. However, before Ina could take more than a few steps, Miss Q suddenly opened her mouth and said, Don't worry. Oh, right. Ina, don't forget to feed your kitten when you rest. Don't let the cute kitten run out of the room and look for food because of hunger. Kitten? Is it the kitten I adopted? Ina froze and looked at Kineas subconsciously. Kineas nodded silently and echoed Miss Q's words. That's right. Ina, I know testing Apsaras is hard work, but at least you have to take good care of the kitten. Hearing this, Ina nodded. I got it. Brother, Miss Q, I promise you, I'll take good care of my kitten. Did the kitten run out? When leaving the underground hangar, Ina's mind couldn't help but have this question. However, this question didn't last long before it was dispelled by a group of people who came out from another tunnel. Miss Ina. As soon as they met, the burly man walking at the front was Norris Barkard, who had gotten acquainted with Ina during the previous battle and subsequently became her bodyguard. Norris, you're here. Thank you for being my bodyguard this time. After the V-engine was successfully installed, Norris faithfully piloted the Lugan Tactical Reconnaissance Aircraft to provide real-time navigation information for Apsaras. No, this is what I should do. Miss Ina. As usual, in the face of Ina's gratitude, Norris didn't show too much emotion. He only had a serious face and said the same words. Is that so? Based on today's test results, the first phase is probably completed. In the future, we will have to rely on your strength. Norris, yes, I will do my best to be your bodyguard. Norris and the soldiers behind him saluted in unison before opening his mouth to speak again. Miss Ina, you left quickly before, so Major General Kinnis didn't have time to inform you that there will be a celebration banquet tonight. Celebration banquet? Ina paused for a moment, but she quickly understood. Since the V engine had proven its power, then Apsaras naturally met the conditions to enter the next phase. No, it should be said that after the V engine became a part of Apsaras was enough to skip most of the plans and enter the final plan. As the test pilot of Apsaras, Ina was very clear about this. Countless thoughts flashed through Ina's mind, but she only nodded faintly. I understand. Norris, I will be there on time. Yes. Miss Ina, please rest at ease. Leave this to us. Please. Norris. After saying goodbye to Norris, Ina, who returned to her room, began to look around. In the end, Ina saw the kitten that Miss Hugh and Kinias said was running around. It was quietly lying on the small bed that Ina had prepared for it. Kitten? Ina tried to yell out. The white cat Mimi's ears trembled slightly. Then it looked up at Ina, buried its head in the small bed, closed its eyes, and continued to sleep. Seeing this, Ina wasn't surprised. After all, before coming here, she had seen the cats raised by the young ladies of other families behave in a similar manner. Therefore, Ina also concluded that the pure white cat's behavior at this moment was one of them. However, Ina didn't know that this white cat Mimi was secretly observing Ina. Not affected? When did that woman become so kind? The white cat Mimi slightly opened its eyes and secretly observed Ina, who was tidying up the room. After a long time, the pure white kitten still couldn't sense the energy fluctuation that it should have. No, it definitely could sense from Ina. Confused, the white cat Mimi raised its head and once again looked at Ina, who was tidying up the room. And Ina, who was tidying up the room, also noticed the white cat Mimi's gaze. Kitten, what's wrong? Are you hungry? Ina looked at the white cat Mimi, who raised its head and looked at her, then took out an unopened bag of cat food from the drawer next to her. Do you want to eat? Kitten. Ina shook the cat food in the bag, making the cat food in the bag rustle. At the same time, she also tried to attract the pure white cat. In the next second, the white cat Mimi lying on the small bed moved. It stood up, jumped lightly from the small bed to Ina's feet, then circled around Ina and glanced at the bag of cat food under Ina's shaking. After that, it walked out of the door without looking back. Hey, wait, kitten, there's food here. Don't go out. The white cat Mimi walked away confidently, but Ina looked at the bag of cat food in her hand in surprise and hurriedly tried to stop the white cat Mimi. The result was obvious. When Ina chased out of the door, the white cat Mimi's figure had already disappeared in the corridor. It ran away so quickly. Looking at the empty corridor left and right, Ina could only take the bag of cat food in her hand, close the door, and prepare to wear the clothes for the celebration banquet tonight. Back to the white cat Mimi, which was also the white cat State Zero. Previously, it had noticed the whole process of the Apsaras that was created by Kenya's and encountered Ray Minkai and the others. It was about to fail due to the lack of a reactor, but it suddenly revived. However, even though the white cat State Zero had witnessed the whole process, due to the presence of a certain woman, the white cat State Zero did not dare to get too close. In the previous encounter, the white cat State Zero was not sure if the other party had already seen through its identity. After all, in the white cat State Zero's memory, its current weak and pitiful cat body was formed after the collapse of its home world and wandered to the Lulusho world. However, regardless of whether the other party had seen through its identity, the white cat State Zero had to personally go to the underground hangar and see the engine installed on Apsaras with its own eyes. Along the way, the white cat State Zero familiarly moved along the pipes on the ceiling towards the underground hangar. From time to time, soldiers pushed food and drinks along the corridor below. In this secret base that had begun to implement material control, perhaps this was an opportunity to indulge in delicious food. Therefore, while pushing the food cart and laughing about what kind of new life they would usher in after the completion of the Apsaras project, the soldiers did not notice the little white cat sneaking all the way from the pipes above to the underground hangar. It should be here. Following the intricate pipes, the white cat state 0 quickly arrived at a huge space. Above the dome, 100 meters above the ground, there was a huge screen door at least 30 meters in diameter. The white cat state 0 focused its gaze. In the center of this huge space was the target of the white cat state 0's trip, Apsaras. Now, it was just half an hour before the celebration banquet began. All the research and development personnel who participated in the celebration banquet had already put down their work and headed to the large conference hall where the banquet was held. The only ones left here were the John soldiers who were on daily duty. The white cat state 0 casually glanced around and figured out the number of soldiers distributed around. Only less than 10 people? How careless! The white cat state 0 raised its front paw and jumped from the pipes on the ceiling to the wooden box placed below. Although there were less than 10 people guarding Apsaras, their vigilance was very high. The white cat state 0 only lightly stepped on the wooden box and was discovered by these people. However, these vigilant soldiers could not help but lower their muzzles after seeing the appearance of the white cat state 0. What? So it's just Miss Ina's cat. TSK. Little cat, why didn't you enjoy the banquet with Miss Ina? Instead, you came here. Could it be that you're here to catch rats? One of the soldiers said after seeing the white cat state 0. The others could not help but laugh. What are you talking about? Where did the rats come from? It's all a mess of gasoline smell. If it were me, I would rather choose the banquet with the fragrance of delicious food than here. Squatting on the wooden box, the white cat state 0 calmly looked at these gewing soldiers who were chatting and laughing with each other to pass the time. Then it got up, jumped down from the wooden box to the ground, and walked towards Apsaras. Hey, little cat, don't go over there. That's not your cat tree. When the soldier who teased the white cat state 0 saw the white cat state 0 walking towards Apsaras, he immediately took a few steps forward and blocked in front of the white cat state 0. However, he was only met with the white cat state 0's disregard. Hey, wait, that's not a place you can go. Seeing that he was ignored by a little cat, the soldier immediately made his move and tried to pinch the white cat's neck. However, he was met with a merciless claw from the white cat state 0. Swoosh! A cold light flashed, and the back of the hand of the gewing soldier who was trying to catch the white cat state 0 suddenly became a bloody mess. My hand! The pain of his flesh being torn instantly pierced through the gewing soldier's thoughts, causing him to abandon the idea of trying to catch the white cat state 0 on the spot. He could only hold his bleeding right hand and howl miserably. Little did he know that the white cat state 0 had already shown him mercy. If the white cat state 0 had used its powerful claws, even if it was only a 10,000th of its strength, the gewing soldier would probably have died. Puff! 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 Suddenly, a series of muffled sounds rang out one after another. It was the sound of the gewing soldiers who were stationed here falling to the ground. Even the gewing soldier who was holding his bloody right hand could not help but roll his eyes and fall to the ground without warning. This was not done by the white cat state 0, but by someone else. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the white cat state 0. With a leap, it jumped onto the elevator of Apsaras and turned its head to look at a dark corner. Ta! 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 Following a series of heavy metal footsteps on the ground, a figure shrouded in a huge cloak slowly walked out of the shadows. It was at least 2 meters tall. Under the cloak, the white cat state 0 could not see the true face of the figure. The only thing it knew was that under the hood, there was a pair of flashing red eyes and a cold aura that was not something human could emit. Is it not a life form? The white cat state 0's claws flashed, and the front claws that could tear through gold and iron suddenly popped out. Chapter 306. Heavy footsteps sounded rhythmically, and the figure covered by the cloak walked out from the shadows to the light. With the rustling sound of the cloak being lifted, a dark muzzle appeared in front of the white cat. It was a right hand forged from cold steel. Above his right hand, there was a gun barrel that extended outwards from his forearm that was opened upwards. There was no doubt that this right hand was not a right hand that a creature should have. Puff! In the next second, an almost inaudible muffled sound tore through the air. Immediately after, a burst of sparks suddenly exploded at the position where the white cat was originally at. Puff, 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 puff. The white cat moved. Following behind him were the bullets fired by the cold, gigantic figure. On the ground, the platform exploded with sparks. If it were not for the silencer extending out from the cold forearm, at this moment, other than the white cat's figure scurrying around, there would only be bursts of loud gunshots tearing through the space. The white cat's figure flashed and rushed behind the console placed next to it like lightning, blocking the rain of bullets that were biting its figure from the console. There's no breath of life. Is it a cyborg or a robot? State White Cat Zero's pair of golden pupils looked through the gap between the consoles at the huge figure that was slowly walking towards them because it had lost its target. As the distance closed, the white cat finally saw the pair of flashing red eyes under the shadow of the hood. That was not a light that a human could use. Was not a pair of eyes that a human should have. That was just a pair of eyes forged from cold electronic parts and steel. Moreover, under this pair of eyes, there was no face that a human should have. What appeared in the white cat's eyes was only a cold steel mask that only revealed the flashing red eyes. Ta! 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 The heavy footsteps were getting closer and closer. Before the right hand that was raised from under the cloak fell, the left hand was also raised. Buzz! A slight mechanical sound was heard, and two black muzzles were aimed at the control panel where the white cat was hiding. Poo-pee-you! Another round of gunshots that were suppressed by the silencer rang out. Although the gunshots were suppressed to a very low volume, the tearing sound of the console being hit by the bullet with powerful kinetic energy was very loud. TSK. Pa! Bang! Bang! Countless bullet holes appeared on the originally neat and orderly operating table. The documents placed on the table were shot into pieces and scattered all over the place. Amidst this chaotic scene that resembled falling snow, the control panel was quickly occupied by the chaotic sparks. Chua! Suddenly, a bolt of white lightning shot out from the back of the almost destroyed console. The ice-cold body that was rudely smashing the console immediately turned the muzzle and fired wildly at the white lightning. At this moment, the flickering frequency of the two long silencer tubes suddenly increased by a lot. It was as if the cold body had intentionally held back some of its strength during the previous shooting. Therefore, after discovering the appearance of the white lightning, it immediately released all the firepower on its arms. However, even with all the firepower, it could not capture or even hit the white lightning that rushed out from behind the console. The seemingly ferocious rain of bullets only added a few sparks to the white lightning, adding some color to the sparks. Chua! The speed of the white lightning was extremely fast. Before the cold body had poured out more than half of the bullets in the magazine, it had already rushed in front of it and then raised its sharp claws and waved it. Tis! A sharp sound of metal colliding broke through the air. There are so many hidden gadgets. Under the cold golden pupils was the blade that popped out from the steel arm. The white cat state 0. No, it should be the lion state 0 now. During the attack, just now, the white cat state 0 released part of its strength and became a more powerful and faster lion body. Facing the claw attack of the lion state 0, the attacker only raised his arm and used the blade to easily block it. Pong! As the cloak puffed up, another cold blade from bottom to top went straight to the soft abdomen of the lion state 0. The back leg of the lion state 0 stepped on the hilt of the thrusting sword and jumped back, easily escaping from the threat of the blade. However, before the body of the lion state 0 landed, the gunshots came one after another, leaving no time for the lion state 0 to stabilize its position. Puff, puff, puff. The muffled gunshots once again attacked the lion 0. The Lion State Zero exerted strength on all four limbs and easily escaped from the shooting axis of the bullets. Although the speed of the bullets was very fast, the Lion State Zero knew that as long as he could see the movements of the huge body covered by the cloak, he could easily see through his attack pattern. After a few ups and downs, the Lion State Zero had already circled to the back of the enemy. "Let me see your damn appearance." The enemy, who was always one step behind, just turned around. The Lion State Zero seized the opportunity and fiercely stomped, waving its sharp claws, and suddenly tore the cloak used to hide the identity of the enemy. Tear! As the broken cloak fell, a body with cold light flowing around it, made of cold steel and composite materials, appeared in front of the Lion State Zero. The pair of flashing red eyes and the iron mask that had nothing to do with humans were clearly reflected in the eyes of the Lion State Zero. This was undoubtedly a robot made by humans, a robot with a certain degree of intelligence. Hey, sure enough, it's just a pile of useless scrap iron. The Lion State Zero smiled contemptuously, once again exerted strength on all four limbs, and took the lead to attack. The Lion State Zero was very fast, but the robot that had exposed its true body was not weak either. The pair of red electronic eyes flashed, and its arms suddenly opened several baffles, revealing all the barrels hidden inside. In an instant, it locked on to the Lion State Zero. In the next second, gunshots were heard. Tut 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 tut. This time, the gun barrel that extended from the robot's arm no longer had a silencer to suppress the sound of gunfire. The frenzied gunshots became the only sound in this underground space. The flickering flames illuminated the faces of the queuing soldiers on the ground, making them flicker in and out of existence. The whistling bullets blocked the path in front of State Lion Zero. As long as State Lion Zero took another step forward, he would definitely receive more and more intensive bullet attacks. TSK. State Lion Zero cursed in his heart. With a flash of his body, he deftly changed his charging posture to the right, and once again rushed to the back of the pile of wooden boxes. Tut 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 tut. There was no reason and no hesitation. As soon as the robot saw State Lion Zero hiding behind the wooden boxes, it immediately aimed its gun at the wooden boxes and frantically poured out all the ammunition it had stored. Tut tut tut. Amidst the loud gunshots, the wooden boxes that were stacked several meters high could not stop the bullets from moving forward. As the wooden boxes were torn apart by the whistling bullets and splashed into the air, the pile of wooden boxes that was several meters tall collapsed with a loud explosion. Boom! Wood chips, wood fragments, and debris were all over the sky. The pieces of wood and boxes of wooden boxes could not avoid the fate of being torn apart by the bullets and became one of the many wreckage that covered the ground. Schwa! Amidst the scattered wood chips, State Lion Zero, hidden behind the wooden boxes, once again exerted its strength. In an instant, it once again turned into white lightning, raised its right claw with lightning speed, and went straight to the robot's arms. Bang! The sound of metal hitting metal exploded, followed by the sound of two metal objects falling to the ground. It was the arms. It was the robot's insufferably arrogant arms. At that moment, State Lion Zero ruthlessly tore off the robot's arms with its sharp claws that could tear through most of the metal. Schwa! The inertia of the rapid movement caused State Lion Zero to leave a long trace on the ground full of wood chips. State Lion Zero even raised its head and sneered at the robot that had lost its weapon. "Is that all you have? Iron lump." Ka! As if it felt State Lion Zero's ridicule, the robot's red electronic eyes suddenly flashed, and the cold armor on its chest suddenly opened up, revealing two four-barreled Gatling guns hidden deep inside. Buzz, 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 buzz. In the blink of an eye, a low, buzzing sound sounded again. State Lion Zero was once again shrouded in a dense barrage of bullets. TSK. Its body's not big, but it hides a lot of things. State Lion Zero scolded in a low voice. Its figure flashed, and it had already rushed dozens of meters away. In the previous battle, State Line Zero had already discovered the robot's weakness. Although its attack was very fierce, it had at least two weaknesses. First, it seemed to have been given a certain order, and it could not hurt the unconscious Gewing soldiers lying on the ground. Otherwise, the Gewing soldiers would have been killed at the beginning. Second, although the robot's barrage attack was terrifying, its movements were not agile enough. As long as State Line Zero exerted a little force, it could not keep up with State Line Zero's movements and was always one step behind. Therefore, State of the Lions Zero only needed to go around to its back again to finish it off. Die for me. State Line Zero successfully went behind the robot again, raised its right claw, and slapped the robot's head with force. Pa! Zila! In the midst of the explosion of sparks, the two roaring Gatling guns were suddenly silenced and fell into eternal silence. Ta! Boom! The robot's central system was smashed by State Line Zero's palm and fell to the ground. Looking at the green liquid that gradually flowed out from the gap, State Line Zero fell into deep thought. Although he could easily kill the robot, the technology on the robot should not be from this world's human technology. The only person who could create this robot was probably that woman, Miss Q. Have I been exposed? State Line Zero raised its eyes and looked at the aisle not far away. The fight just now had caused a big enough commotion. Even if the base did not arrange more troops to guard because of the celebration banquet, it should not have gone unnoticed. While thinking, State Line Zero's golden pupils suddenly burst out a golden light. The sharp claw that was pressed on the robot's wreckage suddenly popped out and pierced deeply into the robot's body. Then, an invisible light flashed quickly from State Line Zero's sharp claw, and it had already wandered a few rounds in the robot's wreckage. Pa! 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 A series of slight explosions sounded one after another in the robot's wreckage. Obviously, the robot's electronic components and database had been destroyed by State Line Zero. Maybe this can buy some time. State Line Zero looked back at Apotzelas, who was not affected by the battle, and finally gave up the idea of continuing to check on it. Even if no one came to check on the situation, if this robot was really that woman, she should have already noticed the situation here. Continuing to stay here would only increase the risk of exposure. With a flash of white light, State Line Zero returned to the weak and pitiful body of the white cat Zero. The little white cat turned its head and glanced at Apotzelas. Then it leaped up. After a few leaps, it jumped onto the ceiling pipe and disappeared. A few minutes later, a series of messy footsteps sounded. Quick! 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 Sure enough, it was just as the white cat Zero had guessed. The Guion army in this base had discovered that something was wrong with the underground hangar. Under the leadership of the fiery red woman in the Guion military uniform, a support team of hundreds of people quickly rushed into the underground hangar. The Guion soldiers who rushed into the underground hangar saw their own soldiers lying on the ground, bullet holes everywhere, wood shavings all over the ground, and the cold metal body lying among the wood shavings. Apart from taking your people away, you are not allowed to touch anything else. Also, tell Kias to come here less often. While the Guion soldiers were shocked by the scene in front of them, the cold female voice instantly woke them up. Yes, now do it immediately. There was no need to look back or ask questions. As long as they heard that cold voice, Gewing soldiers immediately knew what they should do and what they shouldn't do. Thus, Gewing's soldiers quickly carried their fallen comrades out of the underground hangar and guarded the door, leaving the space to the fiery red woman. After everyone had left, the woman with a frosty expression slowly walked over to the robot's body that had lost all signs of life. She bent down to examine it. Even the database was destroyed. Who is lurking here? The Federation army in this world doesn't have such technology. The purple pupils under the fiery red hair flashed with the light of thinking. It's just that I didn't expect that even the small AS Avenger could be so easily dealt with. Is there a human in this world who can tear apart a robot with their bare hands? Or is there a species that I don't know about that has sneaked into this base? Chapter 307. Kineas was furious. Tonight's celebration banquet might have become his nightmare. The celebration banquet that should have been immersed in the joy of the plan's success became infuriating due to the arrival of a man who didn't know what was good for him and forced his way into the banquet. Yuri Kalani. Each and every one of them was impulsive and boorish. His appearance made Kinias, who usually followed noble etiquette, extremely uncomfortable. In some ways, Kinias didn't have a good impression of this man, who was also General Gewing. Especially after this man barged into the banquet. He said Apsalas, who Kinias put most of his effort into, was a toy that wasn't enough. Moreover, after Kinias had shown his indifference, this reckless man had actually turned around to harass his sister, Ina. This made Kinias almost explode on the spot. Fortunately, Ina also made a prompt decision and found a reason to leave the banquet. This allowed Kinias to heave a sigh of relief, but it also increased his dislike for this reckless man. However, Kinias, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, was about to turn around and put some distance between him and the reckless man when a messenger with a panicked expression barged into the banquet and told Kinias about the accident that happened in the underground hangar, as well as Miss Q's words. This was also the reason why Kinias was so angry in the beginning. Mississippi Q, Mississippi. Why didn't you let our people investigate the scene? Standing in the underground hangar filled with bullet holes, Kinias angrily questioned the woman in front of him. Faced with Kinias' question, Miss Q only shook her head and said without emotion, "No need. The bullet holes here were all caused by my Avenger. The only thing worth investigating is the scars on the Avenger's body." As she spoke, Miss Q rolled her eyes and mercilessly stated a reason. "I already provided you with the V-engine. The Avenger wasn't part of our agreement. Therefore, there's no need to talk about investigating. I'll take care of it." With that, Miss Q turned around and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, after Miss Q had walked a few steps away, a series of painful cries could be heard. "Major General Kinias?" Miss Q turned around again and saw Kinias, who was holding his heart and half kneeling on the ground with a painful expression. "Why are you here? Are you ill?" Miss Q took a few steps forward and tried to help Kinhas to the other side. After settling him down, she was ready to call for help. "No, it's just an old problem. Ask Ina to come over. She has my medicine." However, Kinias held onto Miss Q's right hand tightly, instructing her intermittently. Miss Q glanced at her right hand that was caught by Kinias and nodded silently. "In that case, Kinias, wait a moment. I'll get someone to inform Ina to come over." Half an hour later, Kinias was sent back to his room. On the way, Yuri Kalini, the man whom Kinias viewed as reckless and even a mortal enemy, was directly chased back to Europe by Ina with the reason that Kinias needed to rest. After the doctor concluded that Kinias was overworked and needed rest, he asked the accompanying nurse to pass the medicine that Kinias usually took to Ina. "Does Major General Kinias need to take so many medicines every day?" After the doctor left, Miss Q, who was watching from the side, looked at the pile of medicine on the tray in Ina's hand and asked, Brother has always been weak and sickly since he was young. Even after he grew up, he still needed medicine to accompany him. Now, he has put most of his effort into the Apsara's plan." Holding the tray, Ina lowered her head slightly and used a slightly sad voice to explain why Kinias was so weak. If it wasn't for the man tonight, Yuri Kalini, who would make Brother lose his cool whenever he appears in front of him, I'm afraid Brother wouldn't have become like this. Hearing that, Miss Q raised her eyebrows slightly. "Is that so? So it's like this? It seems that I was too harsh just now. I'm sorry. Ina, just now in the underground hangar, I said some things that were considered too much. It might have agitated Kinias." "How could that be? Miss Q, how could you agitate Brother? If it wasn't for you providing the V-engine to Brother, I'm afraid Apsaras wouldn't have been able to enter the next stage." Obviously, Ina, who didn't go to the underground hangar from beginning to end, didn't know what happened. "No, these things are in the past. There's no need to talk about it." "Ina." After pausing for a moment, Miss Q glanced at the medicine on the tray and slowly made a suggestion. "Ina, going on like this isn't a solution. The importance of Apsaras Needless to say, you and I both know, at this critical moment, Major General Kineas wouldn't be willing to lie on the bed. So, I have a suggestion. Maybe it can reduce Major General Kineas' pain a little, and at the same time, it might be able to let Major General Kineas get rid of his dependence on medicine. What? Miss Q, you have a way to cure brother's illness? Looking at Ina, who was stunned but also pleasantly surprised, Miss Q smiled confidently. Of course, the strength of our organization, I'm afraid no one in this world can understand. While Ina was worrying about Kinea's illness, the white cat, State Zero, who had returned to the room, was planning something. It was very clear that even if it destroyed the database of the robot, the Avenger that Miss Q mentioned, it wouldn't be able to hide its existence for a long time. What's more, it had already scouted out most of the information about this base, especially the woman who suddenly appeared here, Miss Q. This woman's appearance could be said to be the white cat's biggest surprise on this trip, and also its biggest gain. Maybe it's time to go back. If I continue to stay like this, that woman will definitely find out about my existence. Its sharp claws unconsciously slid on the table, and the white cat's golden pupils revealed a trace of pondering light. However, even if it made the decision to leave, the white cat was still brooding over the secret of Apsaras. After all, when it was only one step away from discovering the secret, it was interrupted by the Avenger, and this made the white cat unhappy. Even if it destroyed the Avenger, it couldn't offset the resentment in the white cat's heart. I didn't expect that woman to send this iron lump to guard that thing. Isn't she afraid that the humans in this world will covet this technology? On second thought, the white cat immediately rejected this idea, because it knew that Miss Q would definitely use the method of loosening the reins only to grasp them better and lure the humans attracted by the technology to serve her. Therefore, its act of destroying the Avenger might help that woman. Thinking of this, the white cat's heart became even more unhappy. TSK, forget it. Now, I should think of a way to leave this base. Suddenly, the white cat, who was thinking about how to cross the rainforest outside to meet up with Ray Minkai, thought of a good way to discover the truth of Apsaras' V engine and quickly meet up with Ray Minkai. That was to find an opportunity to enter Apsaras' cockpit with Ina. At that time, White Cat Zero would be able to complete the rendezvous with Lei Minkai while investigating the truth of the V-engine. It knew that Ray Minkai would definitely keep an eye on Apsaras' movements. In fact, as the White Cat expected, not only did Ray Minkai keep an eye on Apsaras' movements, he even set up a trap in the canyon where Apsaras appeared, waiting for Apsaras to walk into the trap. When the sound of a propeller stirring the air was heard from afar, Ray Minkai and the others ambushed position. Ray Minkai sent out a signal to prepare. Negri, coming. Following Negri's loud response, the Type 74 hovercraft hidden under the camouflage net suddenly emitted two plumes of smoke. Woo-woo. As the smoke rose, the sound of air being torn apart rang out. Two artillery shells hidden in the giant net soared into the air. Then, the moment the drone rose from the bottom of the canyon, it detonated on the spot, opening up the two giant nets with the impact of the explosion. In the blink of an eye, the drone that was used as a target was firmly trapped inside. Then, several sparks suddenly exploded on the left side of the canyon cliff. Boom, boom, boom. 3 explosions rang out, indicating that the poor drone had been hit by 3 artillery shells, thus ending its short service life. The drill is over. Everyone did well. Looking at the wreckage of the drone scattered on the ground, Shiro Amada secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although they don't know how powerful the huge monster body is, for now, the 8 squad is in the best condition they can do. Phew, it's finally over. Negri wiped the sweat off his forehead and let out a long sigh of relief. Since Eladoya wasn't injured and had to leave the party, Negri didn't have the time to read the letter even though he had received it. After all, under Eladoya's command and the pressure of many tasks, Negri had gradually adapted to the changes required to become a competent soldier. Negri, the drill is over. You have some time before dinner to settle your personal matters. Eladoya, who took off his headphones, casually said to Neguri, then turned around and hugged his music score. Unlike the previous incident where he was injured and had to leave the team, Eladoya was now wholeheartedly focused on his career as a singer, which had paid off and seemed to have a bright future ahead of him. On the other side, in addition to Sandus and Karen, who were carefully adjusting the performance of the drone, Shiro Amada walked down from the drone and sat down on a rock on the edge of the cliff, watching the sun gradually set in the west. Now, Chi-Chi, who was noisy all day long, was nowhere to be found. Shiro Amada, who rarely had free time, couldn't help but stop. He subconsciously took out the pendant hanging around his neck, the clock, and looked at it in a daze. Captain, it seems that your sweetheart is indeed an unforgettable beauty. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded behind Shiro Amada. Shiro Amada was so scared that he almost dropped the clock pendant in his hand. You, Second Lieutenant, it's you. Holding the clock pendant tightly, Shiro Amada let out a long sigh of relief. If he lost the clock pendant in his hand, Shiro Amada would probably turn hostile on the spot. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Captain, it's just that when I saw you sitting here in a daze, looking at the pendant while thinking about something, I couldn't help but call you. Ray Minkai showed an apologetic smile and frankly admitted his mistake. Sigh, forget it. You didn't mean to. It's just, Second Lieutenant, aren't you going to check your drone? Shiro Amada put down his hands and put the clock pendant in his arms. It's already adjusted. In fact, all I can do is to clear the dust for Drone 4. In this place, adjusting the drone's performance is far less important than cleaning up the dust in the way. Ray Minkai's words made Shiro Amada slightly stunned. Then he showed a helpless smile. Ray Minkai was right. Not long ago, Shiro Amada had personally experienced how abominable and disgusting the annoying sand and dust was. However, before Shiro Amada could continue on this topic, Ray Minkai suddenly turned the topic back to the clock pendant in Shiro Amada's hand. Captain, I don't know what kind of person the woman who gave you this seemingly precious thing is. Shiro Amada was stunned. After he reacted with great difficulty, he slowly raised the clock pendant in his hand. Her, Second Lieutenant, if I tell you that this pendant was given to me by a member of the Gion army, would you believe it? Hearing this, Ray Minkai nodded and replied very seriously, yes. Why wouldn't I believe it? Once again, Shiro Amada was stunned by his calm answer. When he was testing Ray Minkai, he didn't expect Ray Minkai's counterattack to be so sharp. All of a sudden, Shiro Amada's words that were brewing in his heart were beaten back. Little did he know that even if Shiro Amada didn't ask, Ray Minkai would know who the clock pendant was from. The reason why Ray Minkai asked this now was just to be able to smoothly proceed to the next step. Shiro Amada was silent for a while. After a long time, he slowly opened his mouth and asked, could it be, Second Lieutenant, you want to? Ray Minkai shook his head, raised his hand, patted Shiro Amada's shoulder, and said with a smile, I'm not thinking of anything. I just felt that it wasn't easy to find out that there was actually a modern version of the story of Romeo and Juliet in this world. So I couldn't help but want to find out. Romeo and Juliet. When Shiro Amada heard the classic story mentioned by Ray Minkai, he immediately fell into silence again. That's right. The story between Shiro Amada and Aina was also a copy of Romeo and Juliet. However, the ending of the two was far happier and more perfect than the original protagonist. However, Shiro Amada still didn't know. Chapter 308. Altitude of 10,000, stable energy output, stable flight posture. In the sky that was already showing the color of a fish's belly, 3 Doral transport planes formed a formation with 1 at the front and 2 at the back, steadily flying at an altitude of 10,000 meters with Apsaras in the middle to escort him. Aina, who was sitting in Apsaras, also carefully looked at the readings on the various instruments in front of her. She meticulously reported the index to the rear base through the communication channel. In the base, Kineas, who was wearing a heavy coat, sat in a chair with a pale face as he listened to the conversation between Ina and the technicians around him. "Why don't you rest?" Standing next to Kineas was the woman in red who was ordered to come. Other than Kineas, no one could clearly explain her existence. The experiment has already reached the most critical juncture. "Miss Q, if I just lie in bed and do nothing, I'm afraid there will be no place for us in this world." "No place for us?" Miss Q raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she was slightly shocked by Kineas' words, but she didn't have the intention to delve deeper. After all, to her, this world, and even the man sitting next to her, was just a passerby. "Then, Kineas, are you confident you can complete this big guy in the shortest amount of time?" Miss Q's eyes moved as she looked at the readings on the main screen in front of her and asked softly, "It's not that I'm confident. It will definitely be completed." Kineas' face was very pale, but his eyes were still bright and even had a trace of determination. "Then, let me look forward to it. Major General Kineas." Miss Q's mouth curved up slightly. "Uh-huh." Kineas didn't say much and only nodded slightly. However, Miss Q knew that under Kineas' body, there probably wasn't much life left for him to squander. The sun rose. The dim cockpit also became brighter with the rise of the sun, revealing Ina's face hidden behind the glass mask. "Mississippi Ina will arrive at the test site in 5 minutes. Please be prepared." Under the bright sun, Norris DFA Euro 3 Dorp fighter arrived from the rear. With the arrival of the 2 Doppler fighters, the Dora transport aircraft around Apsara's also began to turn around and return to the base. Their escort mission had been completed, and the rest was left to Apsara's and the 2 Dop fighters that had arrived. "Understood." Dora could return to the base. "Thank you for your hard work." Ina nodded. After expressing her gratitude for the Doral transport aircraft's escort, she began to descend towards the barren land below. There was a large canyon here that was large enough for Apsara's to hide. Ina could also use this canyon to test Apsara's mobility. It could be said to be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Norris glanced sideways at Apsalas, who had descended to a certain altitude, and issued a warning to his wingman to keep a close watch on the surroundings. He knew that even if there weren't any Federation Army strongholds around this barren land, he still couldn't eliminate the possibility that the Federation Army would appear nearby. In particular, he still clearly remembered the small white mech he encountered in the rainforest. After being rescued by the rescue team, Norris immediately sought out Kineas and reported his experience to him. However, even in the face of the video extracted from the destroyed Zagoi, Kineas could only nod and not make any other comments. He left the information aside and ignored it. This reaction made Norris unhappy, but he couldn't do anything about it, because he knew that Kineas had put all his attention on Apsara's and had no time to care about anything else. Since Major General Kineas has no time to care about anything else, then I'll take care of the small, white mech. The roar of the Doppler fighter's engine resounded through the sky, as if Norris had made up his mind. It echoed in the barren land for a long time. "They're here." Eladoya's eyes lit up as he covered his headset with both hands and yelled loudly, "Everyone, get ready." Amada Shiro, who gripped the clock pendant tightly, reacted quickly and gave the order to get ready. At this moment, no one would rashly make a sound, and no one would attack in advance. Everything would go according to the plan. Rumble. While everyone was calm and waiting for the best time to arrive, a thunderous rumble came from the canyon. It seemed that there was a huge monster rushing towards them along the narrow canyon. "Negari, monitor. How's the monitor?" The sound from the headset was much louder than the rumbling outside. Eladoya tried to distinguish the sound from the headset while asking Negari, who was sitting in front of the monitor. "Yes. Not yet. No. It's here. It's that big guy from before." When Negari subconsciously replied that he didn't see anything, a huge figure suddenly appeared on the screen. At this moment, Negari jumped up as if he had been electrocuted and shouted a reminder. "Past the predetermined coordinates. Get ready to shoot." As the main controller, Karen immediately controlled the machine to remove the camouflage cloth the moment Apsara's past the predetermined coordinates. She raised the grenade net that was already prepared and prepared for the best time to attack. Sandus, Kai, are you ready? Increase the output of the beam rifle to the maximum. The moment Karen's voice sounded in the communication channel, Shiro Amada immediately issued the next order. In order to ensure the success of this mission, Captain Kojima gave priority to the 8th Squad with the latest batch of equipment that was delivered with great difficulty. Among this batch of equipment, there was a beam rifle that was specially configured for Marine Gouda. Although this beam rifle was based on the original beam rifle used by Gouda and was mostly optimized, it was indeed a powerful weapon in the Southeast Asian battlefield. A huge black shadow flew across the canyon. Aina, who was sitting in the cockpit of Apsara's, seemed to be unaware of what was about to happen. She was just following the original plan to test the performance of Apsara's. Bang! 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 Suddenly, when Apsara's huge shadow swept across the bottom of the canyon, a series of weak explosions sounded. Aina, with her keen senses, also caught the sudden abnormal situation at this moment. However, Ayane's reaction was always one step too slow. She only caught the occurrence of the abnormal situation, but did not take effective action to stop the abnormal situation in time. Boom! Boom! The launcher installed at the bottom of the canyon launched floating bombs into the air. The moment Apsara's passed by, it detonated on the spot, causing a series of violent explosions that sealed off Apsara's escape route. Attack! Support aircraft! Support aircraft! Now Apsara's is under attack. Can you hear me? Hurry up and support. In the roaring explosion, Aina immediately sent out a distress signal. If it was in a wide area, even if it was attacked, Apsara's could rely on its flight ability to escape the enemy's attack range, but it could not do so now. After all, Apsara's was in a narrow canyon, and its range of movement was greatly limited. Is this a premeditated attack by the Federation Army? There was no other way. Aina could only move into the depths of the canyon. This was the only choice, but it was also the choice to walk into a trap. Boom! Amidst the huge wind, Apsara's pushed forward with all his strength, trying to escape from the enemy's attack range in the shortest time possible so that he could get a chance to fly away from this barren land. However, Karen, who had been waiting for a long time, would not just watch Apsara's slip away like this. Don't even think about escaping. Karen pressed down hard on the trigger, and the prepared net grenade was launched with a loud bang. The moment the long tail of smoke swept over the canyon, a huge net enough to envelop Apsara's exploded. With the help of a stabilizer, Apsara's escape route was blocked. As long as Apsara's maintained his original speed and continued to sprint forward, he would inevitably fall into the trap woven by this huge net. In order not to fall into this trap, Aina gritted her teeth and used all her strength to barely stop Apsara's in a high-speed state under the overload caused by the strong inertia. Chance! Sandus! Ray Minkai! Apsara's stopped. Unwilling to miss this good opportunity, Shiro Amada decisively issued an attack order. Buzz! Buzz! The two beams of light crossed each other's left and right, piercing through the void and hitting the top of Apsala's armor. However, since only the armor was hit, Apsala's didn't suffer much damage. However, Apsara's height had dropped sharply, and he landed on the ground at the bottom of the canyon in a few seconds. Back up. Can you hear me? Come and support me. As Aina tried her best to stabilize Apsara's, she kept sending out signals for help. At the same time, the huge black muzzle in front of Apsara's was raised and aimed at the black figure on the cliff. Gao, be careful. Sandus, leave the cliff. Although Ray Minkai's Gao had not yet reached the edge of the cliff, Ray Minkai already knew Apsara's next move. Therefore, Ray Minkai loudly warned Sandus. What? Sandus was shocked, but he still followed his instinct and left the cliff according to Ray Minkai's warning. However, before the land fight Gundam could take a few steps away, several dazzling rays of light suddenly pierced through the cliff that Sandus land fight Gundam was standing on and began to wander around wantonly. Be careful. Sandus, get out of there. A look of horror flashed in Shiro Amada's eyes. Although the previous exploration had proved that Apsaras had a powerful beam weapon, this was the first time he saw such an amazing effect. Boom! At this time, Sandus, who was trying his best to control the aircraft to avoid the beam attack from below, was careless, and the beam gun in the aircraft's hand was broken by the beam and exploded on the spot. Damn it! Sandus, who had quick reflexes, had his plane raise its shield to block the aftermath of the beam gun's explosion. He also chose to unleash the propulsion of the land fighter Gundam's backpack, narrowly escaping from the beam gun's barrage. However, before Sandus's could stand firm, the DOP fighter driven by Norris finally arrived. 1-2. It's a small team of MS fighters. It seems that the Federation has discovered that this is Apsaras' testing ground. Within the DOP fighter, Norris's gaze quickly swept across the battlefield, and he had a rough understanding of the situation on the battlefield. You stay here and restrain the MS fighter. I'll go support Miss Ina, so that Apsaras can take off successfully. Yes. Now, Norris, who only had 2 DOP fighters in his hands, made a helpless but only choice. Tut 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 tut. The 20mm Vulcan cannons equipped on the DOP fighter spat out tongues of fire of varying lengths and rained down a torrent of bullets on the enemy in Norris' eyes. And the target identified by Norris was Raiming Kai's dang 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 dang. The whistling bullets blew up clouds of dust on the ground and set off bursts of sparks on Gauda's shield. The DOP fighter quickly swept over Gauda's head. TSK, why are they targeting me? Ray Minkai was a little surprised that he became the target of the DOP fighter, but it was inevitable. Among all the Gaudas present, the only one that could pose a threat to Apsaras was Ray Minkai's Gauda's beam rifle. In order to ensure the successful launch of Apsaras, Ray Minkai's Marine No. 4 Gauda had become a thorn in Norris' side. I will never let you become an obstacle to Miss Ina. In the DOP fighter that completed a small circle, Norris did not hesitate to lock onto Marine No. 4 Gauda and press the button of the 30mm 6-mount missile launcher equipped on the DOP fighter. Boom, boom, boom. 6 consecutive missiles were fired out by Norris without hesitation, all of them heading straight for Marine Gauda TSK. You really think highly of me. Looking at the incoming missile, Lei Minkai pressed the button of the rocket launcher that was as tall as his chest with his right hand. Tut 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 tut. At the same time, the Gundam No. 4, under Lei Minkai's control, quickly retreated, and in one fell swoop, he activated the power of the backpack and pushed it to the maximum. Boom! The roar of the Vulcan cannons, the whistling of the missiles, and the roar of Gauda's backpack became the main theme at the moment. Chapter 309. The heavy shield was swung by No. 4 Gundam, and the black smoke blocking the front was completely dispersed, revealing the DOP fighter jet that was rapidly turning in the sky ahead. Hey, this kind of skill is not something an ordinary pilot can do. If the pilot piloting Gauda was a novice, he might have suffered a lot from the attack just now. The shield in Gauda's hand was already full of scars. As long as he suffered one more round of attacks, he would step onto the final fate of being destroyed. Another round? But DOP doesn't have many missiles left. After completing a new round of turning maneuvers, Norris glanced at the shield in Gauda's hand. Then, Norris glanced at the other side, Gauda, who was besieging Apsaras. Now, the land-based Gundam that was attacking Apsaras had most of its firepower restrained by another DOP fighter, which was Norris Wingman. Therefore, Apsaras was not in a dangerous situation. With the help of the newly installed diffuser beam weapon, Gauda was faintly suppressed. As long as the current situation was maintained steadily, Apsaras' escape was inevitable. Is this the only troublesome thing? Norris took a deep breath. He knew that relying on a single DOP fighter would not be able to defeat the opponent's MS. Even if the current situation was back and forth, it was only because the opponent did not use more means. If the opponent abandoned defense and only relied on the armor on their body to resist the attack of the DOP fighter and launched a forced attack, the end of the DOP fighter would not be far away. I must get Miss Ina out of danger as soon as possible. This thought appeared in Norris's mind. Then he opened the communication channel. Miss Ina, please don't worry about our safety. As long as there is a chance, retreat immediately. Compared to Apsara's existence is more important. Under the canyon, Ina, who was constantly using the diffuser beam to deal with the 8th team's attack, was slightly taken aback. Then she bit her lip and nodded. I know. Norris, you have to be careful too. Understood. Norris responded loudly, then once again pulled up the nose of the Dop fighter and entered a new round of circling. This change also made Ray Minkai have some new discoveries. This attack pattern, I have some impression. The battle that was taking place was not completely based on the scene in his memory. Not to mention the existence of himself and Gauda, the Dop fighter in front of him, which was obviously more powerful than the original Dop fighter in the original battle, was bound to be a variable in this battle. The enemies, ACE, the crosshair of the beam rifle kept biting at the back of the Dop fighter, trying to lock onto it at a certain time in the future and launch a beam that was enough to obliterate the Dop fighter. It was as if the Dop fighter jet knew how terrifying the beam rifle was. Thus, under pilot Nora's control, it kept making all sorts of maneuvers to avoid the beam rifle's lock-on and attack. It had to be said that Norris's technology could indeed be described as powerful. Every time Ray Minkai was about to pull the trigger, Norris's Dop fighter could always capture the subtle murderous intent emitted by Ray Minkai at this moment and completed the evasive maneuver in an instant. This feeling, is it the legendary NT? Ray Minkai's eyes locked onto the Dop fighter. Although he knew that Norris had appeared, he didn't know that Norris was now sitting in the Dop fighter that was fighting with Gauda. Therefore, the Dop fighter's many stunning performances amazed Ray Minkai. Beep, 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 beep. The beam rifle's crosshair flashed for a while, and once again locked onto the Dop fighter. However, Ray Minkai did not immediately pull the trigger. Instead, he raised his hand and pulled the scope away, giving up the auxiliary function of the sniper scope. In the next second, Number 4 Gauda waved his left hand back, and the broken shield in his hand fell to the ground, splashing a burst of sand and dust. Immediately afterward, the fire god cannon installed on the left chest exploded. Vroom, vroom, vroom. The roar of the fire god cannon tore through the hot air, shooting the whistling bullets into the air, and a chain of bullets that almost formed a ray of light was thrown at the Dop fighter. TSK, your reaction is really fast. Seeing this, Norris's movements changed. He immediately pulled the distance between the Dop fighter and Number 4 Gauda, and made several rolling maneuvers in a row to avoid the bullet chain fired by Number 4 Gauda's fire god cannon. Vroom. In an instant, the moment the Dop fighter was about to avoid the bullet chain attack, a beam of light broke through the air. Not good. The moment the blazing beam of light broke through the air, Norris, who was shocked, immediately pulled the joystick, trying to make a maneuver that was enough for the Dop fighter to completely avoid the beam attack before being hit by the beam. However, the speed of the beam of light was too fast. In the blink of an eye, the moment the Dop fighter made a movement to lift the nose, the beam of light had already brushed past the belly of the Dop fighter. Boom! The blazing particle flow instantly melted through the skin of the Dop fighter, completely exposing the ammunition depot of the Dop fighter. If not for the fact that Norris had already used up more than 2/3 of the ammunition of the Dop fighter jet in the previous battle, Norris and the Dop fighter jet would have been engulfed in the explosion that led to the underworld along with the Dop fighter jet. However, even if the Dop fighter was freed from the explosion of ammunition, it was no longer able to fight in its current state. Listening to the painful groans from all over the fuselage, Norris knew that he had reached the point where he could no longer continue to fight. Even if he had the thought of perishing together with the enemy, the Dop fighter that had lost most of its control and could barely rely on inertia to control its course at a small angle was no longer able to do this. Miss Ina, I'll stop here. Wingman, you must open up a path for Miss Ina. As the Dop fighter fell into the rainforest on the edge of the wilderness, Norris's voice also reached Ina's ears through the communication device. Norris, Ina was stunned. As if she had realized something, her expression immediately became painful and sad. Then, Apsalas, who was at the bottom of the canyon, suddenly increased the output of the V engine to the limit. Boom! The turbulent energy storm instantly set off a sandstorm at the bottom of the canyon that completely covered Apsala's figure. What? Be careful. Retreat. As soon as Shiro Amada saw the sudden sandstorm that rushed from the bottom of the canyon to the top of the cliff, he immediately warned. However, it was too late. In the billowing sandstorm, Apsala's huge figure suddenly rushed out of the sandstorm. In the next moment, the huge beam mega cannon in front of him lit up with a terrifying flash. At this moment, the one facing the flash was Gouda, piloted by Sandus. Am I going to die? The man who was called the Grim Reaper by others gritted his teeth and faced his impending fate. Sandus, get out of the way. Suddenly, a huge figure jumped from the edge of the cliff. With the help of the powerful thrust provided by the propulsion backpack, it slammed into the side of Apsalas. The moment the large-caliber mega beam particle cannon fired, it forcibly changed the firing axis. Boom! In an instant, the world in Sandus' eyes lost all color, leaving only the dazzling light that symbolized death. Sandus seemed to have lost all ability to speak in the shroud of this light. He could only stare blankly at the light that symbolized death in front of him until the moment it disappeared. He heard Shiro Amada's voice. Sandus, get out of there. What followed was a loud noise caused by the violent collision between the metals. Boom! A Pusilas, who was being forcefully pushed by the Lanzan Gundam, lost control and crashed into the cliff on one side. However, under INA's control, she managed to stop it from crashing into the cliff. After that, she turned around and slammed the other side of the Lanzan Gundam driven by Shiro Amada into the cliff. The violent impact almost made Shiro Amada unable to hold the joystick tightly. Apsalas did not just slam Gouda into the cliff, but he also pressed Gouda into the cliff and dragged a deep scratch on the cliff. At the same time, Gouda's armor and parts could not withstand the powerful force of friction and pressure, so they fell off Gouda's body one after another. Damn it! I can't let you get away like this. Shiro Amada, who was forced into a desperate situation, decisively pulled the trigger of the Fire God cannon. Tut 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 tut. In a burst of sparks, the Vulcan cannon finally broke through Apsaras' armor and damaged the parts protected by the thick armor. Boom! Boom! Explosions inevitably erupted from within Apsaras. Thick smoke billowed out from the gaps in Apsaras' armor. An ear-piercing alarm rang in INA's ears. In order to escape, in order to prevent Apsaras from being destroyed, and even more so because, in that instant, Ina seemed to have heard a familiar voice. That was the man who had once fought with her in the universe, but by a freak combination of factors, they had become allies in order to survive. A man who gave him a strange feeling, Shiro Amada. Yes, that was right. That voice should belong to Shiro Amada. In the midst of crisis and panic, Ina chose to quickly escape from the battlefield. Boom! Apsaras used the last of his energy to forcefully push his huge body and Gouda up into the sky, disappearing from everyone's sight. Captain, coming back to his senses, Sandus stared at the small black that Apsaras had turned into in horror. Virum! The light beam tore through the sky and blew up the Doppler fighter that was trying to retreat after Apsaras left. It still happened? The one who made this attack was number 4 Lu Gouda, piloted by Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai sat in the cockpit, looking in the direction where Apsaras disappeared, and sighed slightly. The departure of Apsaras with Gouda undoubtedly meant that the battle was about to come to an end. Moreover, in the battle just now, Ray Minkai received a signal from the White Cat State Zero, who had been in stealth mode all this time. Judging from the content of the signal, this guy seemed to have obtained very important information. However, White Cat State Zero still had something to confirm, so he could not rush back in time to meet up with Ray Minkai. Is it Apsaras? Although White Cat State Zero did not elaborate on what it was and had to confirm it personally, Ray Minkai had already guessed it. Eladoya, can you confirm the captain's signal? Karen's anxious voice echoed in the communication channel. Similarly, everyone in the 8th Squad was in the same situation. Under this pressure, Eladoya used all the methods he knew, but they were all in vain. No, the captain's signal seems to have disappeared. There is no response at all. Eladoya clenched his teeth tightly and did not give up any hope. At this moment, Kai's voice sounded. Eladoya, send a distress signal to the captain. Right now, we can't find a captain's signal at all with just us. The only way to do this is to use a reconnaissance aircraft. Kai's suggestion was indeed the most likely way at present. However, other than this, everyone still wanted to rely on their own strength to find Apsara's and Gauda's whereabouts. In this regard, Kai could only shake his head. He looked up. Right now, Apsara's should have flown to the sky above the snowy mountain in the distance, right? Perhaps he was already falling rapidly when Shiro Amada and Aina met again in the sky. After pondering for a moment, Kai raised his hand and pressed the communication button with Eladoya. Eladoya, connect to the captain's communication. I have a situation to report to the captain. In a vast snowy mountain, the wind that rolled up was terrifying. Any liquid that was exposed to the cold wind would be instantly frozen. Under such circumstances, any creature that didn't take any measures to keep warm would die in this cold, snowy land. In the cold wind, a woman in a red pilot uniform walked with difficulty on the snowy mountain slope. She did not know where she should go, but she knew that she had to find that person in this cold wind. Is that you? Shiro. Aina raised her head and squinted her eyes, trying her best to look forward. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the midst of the gale. It was a huge figure. White fur fluttered in the wind. A golden beast's eyes indifferently looked at Aina, who was barely standing in the wind. The huge and majestic head made Ina's body instantly tense up. A lion? A snowy white lion. Yes, that's right. What appeared in front of Aina was a 2-meter-tall, snowy white lion. Chapter 310. The helicopter's propellers stirred the hot desert air, stirring up the sand and dust around the landing point, obscuring most of the vision of the people waiting for the helicopter to land not far away. This was the 3rd team participating in the search and rescue of Shiro Amada. After Kai and Eladoya reported the situation to Captain Kojima, Kojima did not hesitate to send a number of search and rescue teams to search and rescue the area where Shiro Amada's Gauda land may have crashed. However, due to the complicated terrain and changeable climate, the progress of the search and rescue was not very ideal. Moreover, seeing that the progress of the search and rescue team was hindered, Karen, Eladoya, Neguri, and even Sandus took the initiative to request to participate in the search and rescue team. Due to various considerations, Captain Kojima finally agreed to their request. However, as a member of the 8th Squad, Kai was left behind and was ordered to return to the station immediately. Therefore, the helicopter that brought the 3rd search and rescue team over also became Kai's means of transportation back to the station. Second Lieutenant, please rest assured, I will bring the captain back in one piece. Sandus had been brooding ever since he was saved by Shiro Amada at the cost of his own disappearance. Including the last time they fought in the universe, this was the 2nd time Shiro Amada had saved him. Okay, Sandus. Captain, I'll leave it to you. Kai looked behind Sandus and nodded. Now, in the entire 8th Squad, except for Sandus who came to see them off, Eladoya, Karen, and Neguri had all devoted themselves to the search and rescue. Therefore, only Sandus came to see them off. Sand and dust were once again stirred up by the propellers and swept away in all directions. In the rolling sand and dust, Sandus's straight body was like a javelin inserted into the ground, motionless in a military salute, watching Kai's helicopter take off. A few hours later, Kai finally returned from the hot desert to the humid and sultry tropical rainforest. When his feet stepped on the soft mud, a major and 2 armed soldiers came to greet him. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai belongs to Squad 8, right? The major glanced at Ray Minkai's military rank and said calmly, "Yes, I'm Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai." Ray Minkai glanced at the two soldiers in military police-style shoulder straps standing behind the major and knew that they didn't come with good intentions. Identity confirmed. "Well, Lieutenant, please come with us. There's an officer who needs to speak with you." The major didn't say much. After confirming Ray Minkai's identity, he signaled the two military policemen behind him to bring Ray Minkai to the large pallet-level heavy land artillery warship that had never appeared in the encampment before. This heavy-duty battleship with a length of 215 meters and a height of 85 meters looked cumbersome, but in fact, it did use the air cushion function produced by the thermonuclear jet engine as a means of movement. Therefore, it could move on flat ground and even on water. At the same time, this big guy with two large main cannons and three triple-mounted secondary cannons was also used as a frontline command center. According to the major's words, it was not difficult to see that Ray Minkai was going to enter this big guy to meet the big man who was waiting in the frontline command center here. However, when Ray Minkai was brought to the land artillery warship, he found that the only person standing in the dim room was Commander Xiao Dao. "You're here, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Come here." In the dim light, Commander Xiao Dao waved to Ray Minkai and motioned him to come forward. At the same time, the major and the two military policemen who brought Ray Minkai here left the room. Ray Minkai, who was a little surprised, suddenly felt that this time it didn't seem to be a punitive expedition. This guess was confirmed when Ray Minkai walked to Xiao Dao. "Buzz!" As Ray Minkai came to Xiao Dao, a faint light suddenly rose from under Ray Minkai's feet. While Ray Minkai narrowed his eyes subconsciously, he saw an image that was made up of many lines, as well as groups of flowing data appearing under his feet. This, after adapting to the light at this moment, Ray Minkai also recognized the owner of the giant pattern that appeared under his feet. Apsalis. That's right. The pattern that appeared under his feet was Apsalis, and the data flowing around the pattern was the data collected from several previous encounters with Apsalis. Is it MA that we have encountered many times before? Of course. Ray Minkai wasn't stupid enough to say the name Apsalis out loud. Otherwise, it would definitely bring him trouble. Yes. According to the previous encounters and the intelligence obtained by our technical department from the analysis of multiple energy engines collected by the joint operations of the 6th and 8th teams, the purpose of the enemy is probably to complete this MA, a terrible big guy. Xiao Dao looked down at the screen on the ground and said slowly, then looked up at Ray Minkai. "The power of this big guy, even if I don't say it, the second lieutenant who experienced the previous battle is very clear." "Yes, Captain." Because of this, the captain of our 8th squad, Amada Shiro, disappeared with the demon in order to save his subordinates from the hands of this demon. Hearing Ray Minkai's words, Xiao Dao sighed secretly. Captain Amada is a very good boss. He did what he could and did not hesitate to sacrifice his life to protect his subordinates. For this reason, I will do my best to search for the whereabouts of Captain Amada. After saying this slowly in a firm voice, Xiao Dao once again turned the topic back to Apsalis. "Second Lieutenant, about the information about this big guy, I have reason to believe that you were the first to discover it. I want to hear your opinion." Opinion? Ray Minkai's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, but he did not show it. Until now, Ray Minkai understood why Xiao Dao deliberately asked people to put on a look of condemnation and brought him here. It turned out that it was to understand the information about Apsalis. Perhaps in this station, except for the 6th and 8th squad, no one else had a clear understanding of the existence of Apsalis. Perhaps only platoon leader Xiao Dao, or the colonel standing behind him, could have caused the situation. After giving it some thought, Ray Minkai extracted the parts related to Apsaras from his memory and selectively told them to the little island. According to the information I received, the Gion army hidden in this rainforest has been hiding here since they were beaten up in East Asia. Maybe it's for revenge, or maybe it's to have the power to make the final decision in the war with our Federation army. With that, Ray Minkai stretched out his finger and pointed to the screen on the ground, pointing to the silhouette of Apsalus. In order to achieve this goal, they created this monster. Make the final decision. Xiao Dao's eyes narrowed slightly. Apparently, he was touched by Ray Minkai's words. Based on the current progress of the Federation army on various fronts, Xiao Dao could already conclude that the best time for the Federation army's counterattack was coming. There was not much time left for Guillaume to jump around. Therefore, the power that Lei Minkai mentioned to be able to decide a battle with a single strike was most likely true. But could it really be possible to rely on a large MA to make the final decision and reverse the entire war situation? Sensing Xiao Dao's confusion, Lei Minkai wanted to say no, but he didn't say out loud. Because Ray Minkai knew that even if he denied this question, the colonel hiding behind Xiao Dao would inevitably think that Apsalus had enough power to change the entire war situation. According to my several encounters with this MA has the ability to fly freely at an altitude of 10,000 meters, and it is also equipped with a large beam particle cannon that is comparable to no. It should be said that it is far more powerful than the main cannon of the battleship by several times, or dozens of times. Ray Minkai chose his words carefully and described the Apsalus he was familiar with. Although in the battle in the desert, we didn't witness the full power of this beam cannon, we can see that this beam cannon has the power to easily wipe out an entire MS team in the blink of an eye. If we allow it to be perfected like this, I'm afraid there will be one more demon above our heads. After listening to Ray Minkai's description, Xiao Dao's eyebrows twitched sharply a few times, and the corners of his mouth trembled for a while. Finally, Xiao Dao was silent. He knew that what Ray Minkai said was true. Whether it was the battle video extracted from Marine Gouda of the 8th Team or the exploration research of the captured energy engine by the engineering team, they all undoubtedly pointed to one fact. The enemy was indeed developing a terrifying weapon that could raze a mountain to the ground in an instant. After a long silence, Xiao Dao finally slowly raised his head and looked at Ray Minkai. Let's call it a day. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, thank you for your hard work. But there are more tasks waiting for me in the future. I'm afraid we won't have the time to have a good dream before we eliminate this demon above us. Yes, Captain, I fully understand and accept this. As long as the captain needs it, please give the order. Ray Minkai immediately saluted. Yes, you may leave. Also, find your captain as soon as possible. Yes. However, just as Ray Minkai turned around and left, Xiao Dao suddenly asked a question that seemed inexplicable to outsiders, but to Ray Minkai, it was a matter of course. Second Lieutenant, do you think Captain Amada will betray us? Betray us? Ray Minkai asked knowingly. It's just a hypothesis. Second Lieutenant, don't take it seriously. Xiao Dao shook his head and smiled bitterly. Is that so? Ray Minkai pondered for a moment, turned around again, and said seriously to Xiao Dao, in my opinion, the captain may be tired of war, but he will never betray the Federation. On the contrary, sometimes the captain will fight with all his might for the people he misses in his heart and end the war. Xiao Dao was stunned by Lei Minkai's words for quite a while. In the end, Xiao Dao burst out laughing. Ha ha, I see, I understand. As expected of Shiro Amada. I understand now. After laughing for a while, Xiao Dao gradually stopped laughing. Thank you, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Sure enough, the team members who get along with each other day and night know their captain best. Okay, Second Lieutenant, go and find your captain. Yes, swoosh. Xiao Dao looked at the automatic door that blocked Ray Minkai's figure outside the door, then raised his hands and clapped. With the sound of the clapping, the dim room was suddenly shrouded in bright light. Moreover, 4 huge screens appeared in the front, back, left, and right of Xiao Dao. On these 4 screens were the generals in charge of the various battlefronts on Earth, and even the Southeast Asian battlefront, as well as Xiao Dao's immediate superior, Colonel Rhea. Xiao Dao, it seems that the Second Lieutenant is doing a good job on your side. Colonel Rhea said slowly. His speech also represented the approval of many generals. Yes. After all, most of our information about this MA came from Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. If it weren't for his activity, I'm afraid we wouldn't be so familiar with this MA now. Xiao Dao nodded and sighed. He led a whole mechanical mixed brigade in half a year, but the results were not as important as the few weeks they came here. Strictly speaking, Xiao Dao may have lost face in front of his colleagues. Well, we have calculated the situation that Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai said just now through the supercomputer in the headquarters. This MA does have the terrible power to break through Chabro's defense network and raise Chabro to the ground in one fell swoop. Colonel Rhea looked around, and after obtaining the acquiescence of the generals, he said what he knew. What? Is it true? So, is it time for a general attack? While Xiao Dao was shocked by this fact, he also realized that the Southeast Asian battlefront may have reached the time that it must be solved. Yes, Xiao Dao, mobilize all the forces that can be used. We must defeat the enemy before the enemy's MA is finally completed. Use all the forces that can be used to prevent this MA from appearing in the sky above Chabro. Colonel Rhea clenched his fist and said loudly, "At the same time, I will also go to the front line in person to command." Xiao Dao, everything is in your hands. Yes, Colonel. The light immediately went dark. When it lit up again, the face that appeared under the light was that of Colonel Rhea and a man with a scar across his face. Chief of Staff, the Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai you recommended is really good. I hope that after the war is over, this Second Lieutenant will be able to help me a little. Colonel Rhea's eyes flashed with appreciation, and he did not hide his appreciation of Ray Minkai to the scarred man in front of him. I believe that Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai will be at your service. General. Chapter 3:11. The roar of the engine extended from the depths of the desert to the foot of the snowy mountain in the distance. In the billowing sand and dust, a team of 3 Marines Gouda and a Type 74 air cushion truck were moving quickly towards the snowy mountain over there. Is the news true? When a Marine Gouda driven by Karen appeared in front of the canyon in front, it stopped, and Karen's voice came from inside. It's true. According to the information feedback from the reconnaissance aircraft, a few hours ago, before the snowy mountain was blown by the storm, a distress signal was indeed detected. Eladoya, who was sitting in the Type 74 air cushion truck, never took his hands off the monitoring equipment from beginning to end. Even if he was communicating with his teammates, his hands were still constantly adjusting the monitoring frequency, trying to find a clue from the surrounding radio waves. In other words, we have to walk into the snowy mountain that has been enveloped by the storm. Sandus Marine Gouda also stopped behind Karen's Marine Gouda, raised its head slightly, and used its electronic eyes to scan the snowy mountain behind the canyon in front of it. At this moment, the scenery on the snowy mountain could no longer be seen clearly. There was only a vast expanse of whiteness. The information from the reconnaissance aircraft should not be wrong. Moreover, after that, they also found John's reconnaissance aircraft and fighter jets appearing over the snowy mountain. I'm afraid that the pilot of the MA opposite is still alive. Number 4 Marine Gouda, which was Ray Minkai's Marine Gouda, walked past the crowd, stood at the entrance of the canyon, and locked onto the white storm in the distance. Ray Minkai, who was looking around the canyon and the snowy mountain in the distance, slowly said what he knew and could say. In fact, Ray Minkai was not worried about the safety of Amida, Shiro, and Aina. After all, these two did not have an accident in the original trajectory, but instead had an emotional interaction. Moreover, even if there were some unexpected accidents, Ray Minkai was not worried because of this, because there was still the White Cat, State Zero, around Amada Shiro and Aina. Karen, Sundas, Eladoya, and even Negari, who had been silent all this time, looked at each other and made a decision. That was to set off, go and bring back their captain. When all the members of the 8th Squad stepped into the canyon leading to the snowy mountain, the cold wind and white snow became everything in front of them until they found the missing Shiro Amada. A bone-chilling wind swept across the other side of the hill, freezing everything in its path. In this cold wind, white fur gently fluttered in the wind. The pair of golden beast eyes were quietly looking at the woman who was holding the unconscious man in her arms. "You, who exactly are you?" The woman with short silver hair hugged the man tightly in her arms. Her frightened and confused eyes never left the giant white lion standing in the cold wind. The giant white lion did not seem to care about the woman, but raised its head and looked at the top of the cliff not far away on the left. Subconsciously, the woman was puzzled by the giant white lion's actions and turned to look in the same direction. Suddenly, her pupils shrank. "Apsalis, your target is Apsalis." The silver-haired woman held the man's hands tightly, and a feeling of powerlessness spread from the bottom of her heart to all parts of her body. Could it be that the strange giant white lion's target was Apsalis? How could it be? Animals are interested in human creations? The woman laughed when this thought appeared, but she could not dispel this thought. It was too strange. This gigantic snow-white lion was simply too strange. If it had not appeared and guided her, she was afraid that it would have taken her a while to find the man in her arms. "You, who exactly are you?" After hesitating for a moment, the woman who could not find a suitable adjective finally said the word human. Hearing the woman's question, the giant white lion that was looking at Apsalis slowly lowered its head and looked at the woman and the man in her arms. Then, the snow-white lion took a step forward and walked towards the woman. As the distance between the two sides shortened, the giant white lion's huge body also brought great pressure to the woman. Under this pressure, the woman subconsciously retracted her right hand that was holding the man and reached for the pistol at her waist. However, in the next second, the giant white lion stopped, stretched out its right paw, and gestured on the snow as if it was writing something. Seeing this, the woman stopped and frowned as she looked at the words written by the giant white lion. "Keep warm." Once she saw the words clearly, the woman suddenly woke up. From a moment she found the man in her arms until now, she seemed to have not really done anything to keep him warm. If this dragged on, something bad might happen. "Sorry, I have to do something to keep him warm first." Unexpectedly, just as the woman got up and wanted to drag the man to the broken, half-kneeling humanoid MS Lu Zhangao, not far away, her hands suddenly became empty. The giant white lion had unknowingly grabbed the man's collar and dragged him step by step to where Lu Zhangao was. "You." The woman was shocked. The giant white lion's huge body that was at least 2 meters tall was actually able to drag the man in her arms away unknowingly. Was she dreaming? After placing the man on the leeward side of the tall Lanzan Gundam, the white lion turned around and looked at the woman. It tilted its head slightly, indicating that the woman could close the canvas that was stuck between the tall Lanzan Gundam's left leg and was rustling in the wind to block the wind in this leeward area. However, when she was closing the canvas, the woman realized that the giant white lion had left the leeward area and was standing in the wind again. Seeing this, the woman hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she opened her mouth and invited, "You, come here to take shelter from the wind?" The giant white lion shook its head and looked up again at Apsalis that had stopped at the top of the cliff. After confirming that the strange giant white lion's target was Apsalis, the woman finally gave up on the idea of continuing to communicate with the giant white lion. After all, in her opinion, even if the giant white lion climbed onto Apsalis, it probably would not affect Apsalis at all. Thus, under her gaze, the figure of the strange lion was gradually drowned by the cold wind, leaving only a line of words written on the snow. "Stay here. Someone will come to save you." The woman was stunned for a moment, and finally sighed, "Perhaps there really is a god in this world." However, the giant white lion was not the so-called god that the woman spoke of. It was one of the true forms of the white cat, State Zero. Since the battle with the small Avenger AS, it had been lurking in the base, waiting for Ina Sakhaline to climb onto Apsalis again. Therefore, when Ina attacked, the white cat, State Zero, took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention and ran into the cockpit of Apsilas. While leaving the base with the help of Apsila's power, it observed the body that the white cat was very concerned about from a close distance. After some observation, the white cat, State Zero, came to some conclusions. During the battle with the 8th Squad, it also got in touch with Ray Minkai. Now, the white cat, State Zero, finally had the time to investigate Apsilas that had stopped at the top of the cliff after helping Ina and Shiro Amada settle down. The cold wind, which made humans feel at a loss and even threatened their lives, could not stop the footsteps of the white cat, State Zero, who had transformed into a giant white lion. Its footsteps were firm and steady, without any trace of being disturbed by the cold wind. Its furry sideburns made the cold wind helpless. Soon, State Zero arrived at the bottom of the cliff. The only way to enter Apsilas in the shortest time possible was to climb up the cliff. If State Zero went around the two sides of the cliff, it would take a lot of time. The only thing that was certain was that going around the two sides would not allow him to reach Apsilas before the storm ended. Oof. Is this the only way? State Zero grinned and flicked its claws without hesitation. Then again, as a feline, State Zero should not be troubled by this cliff that was not too high, right? What's more, strictly speaking, State Zero could not be classified as a normal feline. Clang! Sparks flew on the cold cliff, and a snow-white shadow quickly jumped back and forth on the cliff. With each burst of sparks, the snow-white shadow leaped higher and higher until it landed firmly on the top of the cliff, which was the snowy ground next to Apsilas. TSK. Why haven't I done such a boring thing? I only need to transform back into the long Fong lion and rush up the cliff in the form of a hunting gull. State Zero shook off the snow on its claws and showed a look of disdain. But soon, State Zero was attracted by Apsilas in front of it. Stepping forward, State Zero circled around Apsilas, whose body was covered in wounds and whose armor had different degrees of damage. There were even signs of distortion. State Zero stopped at the edge of a gap that was still emitting sparks. Is this it? State Zero's golden pupils silently stared at the armor that had a hole in it. Without a doubt, the fluctuation emitted from it was the fluctuation that State Zero was most concerned about. As long as this broken and obstructing armor was removed, State Zero's doubts would be answered. Swoosh! Without hesitation, State Zero raised its right claw and swung at the broken armor. Bang! The moment the crisp sound exploded, the broken piece of armor also rolled in the cold wind, powerlessly rolling down the other side of the cliff. A glimmer of light flew up from the broken armor and quietly appeared in front of State Zero. It's you. State Zero swung its claws, and another broken armor fragment was sent flying and landed on the snow not far away. Then, the glimmer hidden under the armor became even brighter. Fragment. State Zero was shocked. It raised its right claw and carefully used its sharp claws to move away the pipelines around the glimmer of light. However, these actions were only able to move the scattered pipes in the surrounding area. The first layer, no, it should be said that the glimmer of light was wrapped in a delicate device. There was no way to open the device and take out the glimmer of light with simple methods. State Zero did not hesitate or stop his actions. Instead, it raised its right claw and slammed down on the device. Dong! In an instant, a loud sound like a bell suddenly exploded. The surrounding wind and snow were all pushed away, and the space around the cliff where Apsara's was became empty. However, even with such a big commotion, the device wrapped in the glimmer of light was unharmed under State Zero's sharp claws. It's so hard? What the hell is this? A cold light flashed in State Zero's eyes, and he raised his right claw again. This time, the sharp claws were surrounded by golden light. This was the laser claw used by the long-toothed lion. If State Zero had not swallowed the fragments previously, it would not have been able to use this power. Swoosh! The golden light flashed, and the device wrapped in the glimmer of light was immediately shattered. However, before State Zero could show a proud expression, a strange feeling suddenly crept into its heart. No, this doesn't feel like a fragment. Looking at the glimmer that had been broken, State Zero pondered for a moment, opened its mouth and swallowed it. In the next second, State Zero's eyes suddenly widened. This isn't the original fragment. This is a fragment that has been tampered with. After being shocked, the figure of Miss Q naturally appeared in State Zero's mind. Is it you? Miss Q, how dare you do such a thing to our hometown? I will not forgive you. Roar. The extremely angry Snow White lion immediately let out a roar that shook the heavens and earth. The angry roar spread throughout the entire snowy mountain along with the storm. Ah, what's that sound? The originally noisy sound due to the storm became even more ear-piercing when State Zero's roar was heard. Eladoya almost could not stand it, and he accidentally threw the earpiece to the other side. Eladoya, what's going on? Everyone who sensed the abnormality, or rather, heard the roar, asked one after another. No, I don't know either. Maybe it's the monster letting out a roar of dissatisfaction. Hey, I say, let's quickly find the captain and leave this snowy mountain, okay? I heard from the locals that there are monsters roaming this snowy mountain. What nonsense are you talking about? Maybe it's just a lion. Ray Minkai shook his head helplessly. Chapter 312. The snowstorm that swept through the snowy mountains gradually subsided. As the vast expanse of whiteness that once obscured everyone's sight once again restored the beautiful scenery of the sky and snowy mountains, the snowstorm finally stopped. However, unfortunately, the 8 squad that braved the snowstorm encountered a small but fatal avalanche before the snowstorm subsided. Fortunately, Ray Minkai issued a timely warning the moment the avalanche erupted and gathered all the Gauda Marines together. They raised the shields in their hands and artificially created a shield wall that could withstand the impact of the avalanche. Despite Lei Minkai's timely warning, the 3 Gundams could only reduce the impact of the avalanche to a barely acceptable level when faced with the terrifying nature of the avalanche. But the Type 74 hovercraft that was hiding behind the land battle Gundam was not so lucky. Before the avalanche arrived, Eladoya and Neguri drove the Type 74 hovercar to the back of the 3 Gauda Marines in time and placed the anchor in the ground. However, these measures only allowed the Type 74 hovercar to avoid the first wave of the avalanche, but not the subsequent avalanche. Bang! With a powerless cry of pain from the anchor, the Type 74 hovercar was like a rolling snowball that was swept away by the violent avalanche from behind the Gauda Marines. Eladoya, Neguri. Karen saw the Type 74 hovercar being swept away and couldn't help but shout loudly. However, the shield wall formed by the 3 Gauda Marines was already exhausted when resisting the impact of the avalanche. If a shield was suddenly removed at this critical moment, the entire shield wall would be swept away by the avalanche on the spot and end up like the Type 74 hovercar. Karen, Sandus, hold on. Eladoya and Neguri should be fine. At this time, even Ray Minkai could only comfort himself like this. The shield that was erected high up in the air kept howling in pain. Starting from the left arm and extending all the way to the feet, the various parts of the Gundam were constantly trembling under the impact of the avalanche. In front of Lei Minkai and the other 2 was the white wave that was crazily crashing down from above, as well as the screen that was continuously shaking. It was as if in the next instant, this terrifying avalanche would shatter the shield wall formed by the 3 Gundams, completely burying these 3 killing machines created by humans in this snowy mountain. Rumble. Finally, the avalanche stopped. The 3 Gauda Marines that formed the shield wall to resist the avalanche had only their heads exposed above the snow at this moment. The rest of the body was completely buried under the snow. Is it over? Sandus' forehead was covered in cold sweat. Even if he had experienced several life and death crises, when facing the terrifying power of nature, he couldn't help but feel a trace of fear. Eladoya, Neguri. As soon as the avalanche stopped, Karen immediately controlled her body to jump out of the snow and quickly turned on the friendly signal identification device, trying to find the Type 74 hover truck that was swept away by the avalanche. Perhaps it was not meant to die. The Type 74 hover truck that was involved in the terrifying avalanche still sent out a clear signal for help. This made Karen, Sandis, and Ray Minkai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. However, Ray Minkai, who cooperated with Karen and Sandis to rescue the Type 74 hover truck from the thick snow, couldn't help but look at the depths of the snowy mountain, and then at the Type 74 hover truck that was exposed from the dug snow pit. In the end, Team 8 still lost members. Yes, Eladoya avoided the serious injury caused by the impact of Apsaras, but he was injured by the avalanche that shouldn't have happened. Lei Minkai couldn't help but shake his head when he saw Michael and Sandis carefully carrying Eladoya out of the overturned Type 74 hover truck with their heads covered in blood. Judging from the situation of his left leg that was twisted in another direction, Eladoya probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed for a few months. Pain. What are you still doing here? Just let Michael stay with me. Hurry up and find the captain now. Enduring the excruciating pain in his leg, Eladoya unyieldingly tried to drive Lei Minkai, Karen, and Sandis away from the scene. Sandis was stunned. Sandis was stunned for a moment, but he didn't want to leave Eladoya and Negri here. Sandis, stay here and look after them. Karen and I will go first. Also, check the condition of the Type 74 hover truck. If it can still be started, it's best to let them return to the search and rescue assembly point first. Seeing this, Ray Minkai took the lead and made a decision to save Karen and Sandis from being in a difficult position. Yes, let's do that. Sandis, second lieutenant, and I will go find the captain. Now, this damn weather should be over. The next journey will be a lot easier. Sure enough, Karen followed Ray Minkai's words and persuaded Sandis. Well, okay, you all have to be careful. So, Sandis stayed to take care of the two injured and try to restart the Type 74 hover truck, while Ray Minkai and Karen continued to set off into the depths of the snow mountain. Beep, beep. After walking for about half an hour, Lei Minkai's and Karen's landlines rang in unison with a series of urgent signals. A distress signal? Karen's eyes flashed. After quickly pressing a few buttons with her right hand, she looked at the information that appeared on the screen and said in surprise, "It's a distress signal from the Federation. It's the captain." It should be, but we still have to be careful. Before, Captain's Marine Gao flew into the sky with the enemy's MA. Ray Minkai nodded and reminded Karen. I see. The night would eventually leave. When the first light of dawn scattered on the snowy peak, two light spots suddenly appeared in the sky, attracting the attention of the man and woman snuggling together in a canyon in the depths of the snow mountain. Aina, look, what is that? It turned out that the man and woman were Amida, Shiro, and Aina, who fell from the sky in this canyon before. Under the guidance of the Snow White Lion, they were finally able to survive this snowstorm. Furthermore, there was also a fateful farewell. At this moment, the two were staring at the two light spots in the sky. Whoa! The whistling sound of the wind once again resounded in the sky. However, this was not the sound of the blizzard, but the sound of the killing weapon made by humans. The sound of the swordfish fighter jet falling rapidly. It turned out that the two light spots that Amida, Shiro, and Aina saw were the battle between the swordfish fighter jet among the search forces sent by Captain Kojima and the DOP fighter jet driven by Norris, who once again volunteered to search for Aina. Not to mention the swordfish fighter jet, Norris' situation alone was enough to surprise people. In the previous battle, Norris, who fell in the rainforest, was lucky to escape from the cockpit when the DOP fighter jet exploded. He narrowly escaped with the cover of the rainforest to avoid the Federation Army's search and return to the base. However, in the process of escaping, Norris, who had different degrees of injuries all over his body, actually volunteered to participate in the search for Aina regardless of his injuries. This made Kinias, who was also seriously unwell, nod in approval of Norris' request. Miss Aina, you're really still alive. Norris, who was chasing the injured swordfish fighter jet in the sky, saw Ina snuggled up with Amida Shiro and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He even blew up the swordfish fighter jet that tried to escape from his subordinates under the cover of the canyon's terrain. Immediately afterward, Norris endured the severe pain in his body, pulled the DOP fighter jet back into the sky, and sent out a distress signal. However, another swordfish fighter jet rushed into this airspace from another direction, and behind this swordfish fighter jet was a transport plane used by the Federation Army, Steel Bailey. The moment this Steel Bailey entered this airspace, it discovered the existence of Apotzelas and quickly flew above it. It tried to drop Marine Jim in the belly of the Steel Bailey to Apotzela's side, trying to retrieve him. Ina, who saw this scene, did not hesitate to raise her hand and press the self-destruct button of Apsaris, even if Amida Shiro was standing next to her now. Boom! The powerful shock wave generated by Apsaris' self-destruction pushed Steel Bailey, which was hovering above it, to the cliff next to it. Then, before the explosion of Operas ended, the explosion of Steel Bailey followed. Look, there's an explosion over there. The moment the two almost simultaneous explosions reverberated back and forth in the canyon, Ray Minkai and Karen, who had already arrived nearby, also noticed the movement there. It's Captain. Quick, let's go. Ray Minkai looked up at the sky. Sure enough, the DOP fighter jet and another Lugan tactical reconnaissance plane flying quickly from the horizon were converging toward a certain coordinate ahead. It seemed that Ina was about to part with Amida Shiro. This journey was not far, but when Ray Minkai and Karen arrived at the target location, only Amida Shiro and the extremely broken Lu Zhangao were left there. Captain, are you okay? Karen looked at Amida Shiro, who stood in place blankly, and shouted in surprise. I'm fine. Karen. Amida Shiro's expression was not overly excited. Instead, there was a trace of doubt. This might be inevitable. Although Amida Shiro did not take the initiative to confess what happened last night, Ray Minkai already knew. Moreover, Ray Minkai now had to deal with his own meow. Kai, go and kill that hateful woman for me. Our hometown. Our fragment was dealt with in such a way. While Karen's attention was all on Amida Shiro, the white cat, State Zero, turned into a stream of light and rushed to Ray Minkai the moment number 4 Lu Zhangao opened the cockpit and rolled on the ground while cursing a certain existence. Wait. State Zero, what are you talking about? Ray Minkai, who had sharp eyes and agile hands, turned off all external communications and all recording devices in the cockpit in an instant and closed the cockpit door again. Miss Q. Kai, I saw it. One of the murderers who once destroyed our world, Miss Q, appeared in this world. The white cat, State Zero's movements paused, turned over, and stood on the console, and the fur all over its body stood up. Looking at the white cat, State Zero's rarely seen fur standing up, Ray Minkai could not help but be puzzled. Not only was he puzzled by White Cat Zero's hair standing on end, but he was also puzzled by the name Mississippi Q that White Cat Zero mentioned. He seemed to be very familiar with this name, but he could not remember who it was. Perhaps this was also a part of Ray Minkai's lost memory, a very important part. State Zero, say it clearly. Who is Miss Q? The murderer who destroyed our hometown? Ray Minkai's puzzlement made State Zero angry, but soon calmed down. After all, it knew that in the process of escaping from the collapsed hometown, Ray Minkai lost most of his memories of his hometown. Miss Q, we don't know where she came from, but ever since she appeared in our hometown fell into an irreparable state, an unsalvageable state of the world, until the world was destroyed. White Cat, State Zero's voice once again rose with an uncontrollable anger, and it echoed in Ray Minkai's ears for a long time. Miss Q, the murderer who destroyed our world. Suddenly, Ray Minkai thought of a terrible speculation. If the Miss Q mentioned by White Cat Zero really appeared here, then the so-called high-power energy output devices that John had sent over and even the undecipherable engine were probably part of the Miss Q's plot. You guessed right. Kai, I saw Miss Q appear in John's base with my own eyes, and I also saw her give some technology to the female pilot's brother. White Cat, State Zero's gaze gradually turned cold. Before meeting up with you, I had a battle with the robot she sent out. I'm afraid she will soon realize that I should say that someone who doesn't belong to this world like her, have appeared in this world. White Cat, State Zero raised its small head and looked at Ray Minkai quietly. It seemed that it was asking Ray Minkai, "What should I do?" Ray Minkai was silent for a moment, and then opened the communication channel. Karen, send out a distress signal. Inform the rescue team to come and retrieve Marine Gouda. We may have other missions to complete. Upon hearing Ray Minkai's words, Amada Shiro, who was staring blankly at a certain direction in the sky, suddenly turned his head and looked at Ray Minkai's number 4 Marine Gao to Second Lieutenant. "Do you still want to continue the battle?" Ray Minkai paused for a moment, then replied firmly, "Yes, Captain. In order to let this ridiculous war end as soon as possible, the battle now is necessary. Furthermore, if you still want to reunite with her, you can't hesitate any longer. The development of the situation has exceeded our expectations. Maybe." Ray Minkai's voice paused. He did not care about Karen's existence and directly said Ina's name. Maybe Ina Sakhaline will encounter some mishaps after returning to her base. Chapter 313. The Lugan Tactical Reconnaissance aircraft slowly landed on the landing platform. Ina, who was walking down the stairs, immediately saw Norris standing at the side. She was surprised and happy to see Norris, who she thought had died in the battle, standing in front of her once again. "Norris, are you okay?" "Yes. Thank you for your concern, Miss Ina. It's just a small injury." Norris appeared to be very tough, but if his forehead was not covered in cold sweat and his gradually paling face, Ina might have believed him. "Norris, don't force yourself anymore. You go call the doctor." Needless to say, Ina could also see how serious Norris' injuries were. Also, Ina knew that in the rescue operation before, Norris ignored his injuries and forcefully piloted the DOP fighter to fight the Federation's swordfish fighter in an aerial battle. Under such circumstances, Norris' injuries would definitely not be any better. Norris was silent for a moment, but finally nodded. Ina had already returned to the base, so there should not be any more accidents. Under this consideration, Norris followed the doctor and left the underground hangar. "Welcome back, adorable Ina." What was strange was that the person who welcomed Ina was not her brother Kinneas, but Miss Q. Seeing this woman who could charm the opposite sex with every action, Ina did not have a good impression of her, but she did not hate her existence. Moreover, Ina knew that she was the only one who could stabilize her brother Kinneas' condition, so that Kinneas could wholeheartedly fulfill his dream. "Miss Q, where's my brother?" Ina raised her hand to let the other soldiers handle other matters, then looked at Miss Q. "Kinneas? He's resting now. It's really not easy." Miss Q smiled slightly, as if she was complaining to Ina about the process of persuading Kinneas to take the medicine. "He didn't seem to believe that I could stabilize his condition. Just persuading him to take the medicine took a lot of effort. If you were there at that time, I wouldn't have had to spend so much effort." Miss Q's complaint made Ina frown slightly, but she was more concerned about her brother Kinneas' condition. "I'm going to check on my brother." Miss Q, "Excuse me, I'll leave first." Miss Q nodded and stepped aside. "Go." Major General Kinneas had already entrusted the matter to him. "Even though we've lost Apsaras 2, we still have Apsaras 3, which is about to be completed. By then, we'll have to rely on your driving skills." Ina didn't answer. She just nodded and turned to leave the underground hangar. Looking at Ina, who had disappeared into the corridor, Miss Q smirked and said in a low voice, "What an interesting pair of siblings. If the plan succeeds, perhaps keeping them by my side can add some entertainment to my boring time." Miss Q thought so, but she had more important things to do. "I didn't expect Apsalis to be defeated even with the V engine. That really surprised me." Fortunately, I still have a backup plan. Kineas, let me fulfill your dreams. But after that, you'll have to pay a price. Therefore, under Miss Q's order in the name of Kineas, all the participants of the Apsaras project gathered around her and waited for her orders. On the other side, Aina, who was extremely concerned about her brother Kineas' condition, didn't care about the changes in the researcher she encountered. She only hurried to Kineas' room. As soon as she entered, Aina saw Kineas, who was half lying on the bed, slowly flipping through the book in his hand. Looking at his face that was faintly glowing red, he didn't seem to be resting like what Miss Q said. "Brother, I'm back." Although Aina was confused, seeing Kineas' complexion began to improve, she couldn't help but feel happy for him. Hearing Aina's voice, Kineas, who was flipping through the book in his hand, put down the book in his hand, looked up at Aina, and revealed a smile. "Aina, you're back. You didn't hurt there, right?" Seeing Kineas smile, Aina's heart also calmed down. She stepped forward and slowly sat on the bed. She looked at Kineas' complexion, shook her head, and revealed a somewhat depressed expression. "No, I didn't suffer any injuries. It's just that I detonated Apsaras." Kineas closed the book in his hand and slowly shook his head. "Don't be depressed. Aina, any body will encounter accidents in the process of development. What's more, you don't care less about Apsaras than you do about me. You detonated Apsaras for a reason, right?" Aina nodded, opened her mouth, and said part of the reason. "When Norris discovered my whereabouts, the Federation Army's transport plane was trying to land next to Apsaras. In order to prevent Apsaras from falling into the hands of the Federation Army, I had to detonate it." "Is that so?" Kineas nodded and slowly sighed. "If that's the case, then, Aina, you did the right thing. But, as I said before, Aina, you don't have to be depressed. The new Apsaras has already begun construction. I believe that after a while, the new Apsaras will be the final model. At that time, you will still be the pilot of Apsaras." Aina looked at her brother Kineas' confident face, nodded slightly, and softly replied to her brother, "Is that so? Then, I will support you to fulfill your dream. Just like before." Aina. Kineas was probably moved by Aina's words. He suddenly stood up and hugged Aina. "Aina, I know you're the only one who's firmly on my side. Brother, Aina, please support me until I fulfill my dream." Kineas softly called out his sister's name, but his eyes unknowingly showed some peculiarity. But Aina, who didn't notice it, only nodded and gave Kineas an affirmative reply as usual. "I will, brother." Before Aina finished her words, she suddenly felt a sharp pain at the back of her neck. Then, her vision turned black, and she lost consciousness. Puff! Kineas gently caught the unconscious Aina. His face was expressionless, and all that could be seen was calmness. Swish! The automatic door opened. A graceful figure walked out. She glanced at the unconscious Aina, shook her head slightly, and sighed softly. "Don't worry. Kineas, you really dare to do this. I was just giving a suggestion. Madam, this is to ensure the success of the plan. Although I have confidence in my younger sister, there are already uncertainties." The person who came was Miss Q. After she arranged the follow-up work, she returned to Kineas' room and happened to see Kineas unknowingly injected the sedative into Aina's body. Unstable factors? Miss Q slightly raised her eyebrows, waved her hand, and a photo appeared. Then, she waved it in front of Kineas' eyes. "I originally wanted to remind you, but I didn't expect you to act first." "Fine. To me, this is nothing. Also, I have already passed down your request. Now, I have to prepare the engine of the new Apsaras." Miss Q put the photo in her hand beside Kineas' bed and turned to leave. Kineas didn't care about Miss Q's departure. He lowered his head and glanced at the photo. He pressed the bell beside the bed and called in the orderlies who were waiting outside to send Aina back to her room. When he was the only one left in the room, Kineas picked up the photo and squeezed it hard. His gaze was even more vicious as he looked at the man protected by Aina in the photo. "I will never let you take Aina away from me." Shiro Amada, who was hated by Kineas, didn't know what happened to Aina in the John base. The only thing he knew was that after he was rescued and returned to the base, he faced a military trial. Although during the trial, the evidence provided by Rei Minkai allowed Shiro Amada to be cleared of some unnecessary charges, Shiro Amada still had to face a period of confinement to reflect. For Shiro Amada, this was already the best result. After all, compared to the original result of defining Shiro Amada as a spy suspect, this was indeed an acceptable result. Well, kid, anyway, your body is already rotten. Take this opportunity to have a good rest. The old quartermaster sat on the chair and patted the silent Shiro Amada. As for Karen, Sandus, and Negri with a bandage on his head were also in a state of silence. The existence of Ina Sakhaline was already known by the entire 8th Squad. It was just that everyone maintained a tacit understanding and didn't say anything about this information that could possibly send Shiro Amada to prison. Lei Minkai, on the other hand, stood by the window and looked at the pouring rain outside in silence. For a moment, the atmosphere in the entire room became incomparably oppressive, causing the old quartermaster to be at a loss. Helpless, the old quartermaster scratched the back of his head and muttered a few meaningless words. Then, he got up and pulled Negri up while muttering loudly. "Kid, since you are injured, don't come here to join in the fun. Can't you see that it's raining heavily outside? Hurry up and get back to the bed." Wait. It's raining outside." Negri shouted and struggled, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't get away from the old quartermaster's hands. "What are you shouting for? Get back to the bed and sleep. You're just a kid. Why are you joining in the fun?" The old quartermaster kicked and dragged Negri out of the room in big strides, all the way to the field hospital. The remaining Karen and Sandus looked at each other, apologized to Shiro Amada in unison, then turned and left. Now, not to mention the old quartermaster who left first, even Karen and Sandus could see that Shiro Amada and Rei Minkai seemed to have something to talk about in private. The presence of the rest of the people just made them unable to speak. "Second Lieutenant, what did you mean by what you said before?" Sure enough, after everyone left, Shiro Amada looked up at Rei Minkai and asked the question that had been in his heart since he came back from the snow. Literally, "Captain, do you still remember the output devices we seized before?" Rei Minkai withdrew his gaze from the heavy rain outside the window and fell on Shiro Amada's face. At this moment, Shiro Amada's eyes were full of doubts, but he was still worried. Although he was puzzled by what Rei Minkai said, he was worried about Ina Sakhaline's safety. "Output device? Our engineering team didn't find anything wrong with it." Although the engineering team thought that they couldn't analyze anything from the structure, Shiro Amada shook his head and told him everything he knew. "Is that so?" "Of course. This is just a cover for the enemy." "Captain, do you know about new type?" After thinking about it, Rei Minkai finally decided to use the emerging concept of new type to package everything he knew. After all, for the people of this world, the existence of fragments may be mysterious, but it was impossible to learn about it in a short time. The concept of the multiverse was not something that everyone could accept. Therefore, before that, Rei Minkai needed to package it. New type, Emerald Ray. I heard that on the white wooden horse, there was a very strong pilot who seemed to have the legendary new type aptitude. Shiro Amada recalled the rumors about Amuro Ray in the Federation Army, but he still couldn't connect it to his lover, Ina Sakhaline. But even if Amuro Ray is the legendary new type, this has nothing to do with Ina, right? Maybe not. Rei Minkai didn't dare to be too clear about Shiro Amada's doubts. The existence of fragments was too mysterious. Thus, Rei Minkai chose his words carefully and slowly said, "That's right. Whether Ina Sakhaline is new type or not, I don't know. But according to the information I received, the energy output devices we seized might be related to new type." Shiro Amada frowned, but didn't immediately ask. He just quietly waited for Rei Minkai to continue. Rei Minkai continued. Guillaume's research on new type has been going on since a long time ago. In fact, when the Guillaume Principality was announced, new type research was placed on the table of Guillaume Principality's current Guillaume Principality's Kirin Zabi. Therefore, at this point in the war, the situation between Guion and the Federation has been reversed. As long as the Federation army continues to maintain the current pace, Guion's defeat is inevitable. At this point, Shiro Amada also understood Rei Minkai's meaning. So, in order to avoid defeat, Guion began to look for forces other than conventional forces. Does this include the so-called new type? Maybe so. We're the higher-ups of Guion thinking. I don't know. What I know now is that the Guion army hiding here is developing a powerful weapon that can break through the Federation's defense line from high altitude. And this powerful weapon is most likely developed to target the Federation Army's headquarters, Chabro. Chabro. Guion wants to directly attack Chabro. When he heard this news, Shiro Amada jumped up on the spot with a face full of surprise. Yes, it's easy to imagine how powerful Chabro's defense is. But to be able to create such a powerful weapon, it means that its pilot must be the best. Otherwise, it's impossible to control this demon. After Rei Minkai confirmed the final target of Apsaras, he added another sentence. In addition, I also collected a piece of information. When the battle situation is unfavorable, this powerful weapon may be able to obtain a powerful boost through a certain system to complete the mission. A powerful boost? Shiro Amada frowned and immediately asked, "Price?" Yes. Any gain of power must have a price. And the price of this powerful weapon's power boost is very likely to be the pilot himself. Rei Minkai glanced at Shiro Amada and continued. Perhaps, when this function is activated, the pilot himself may not know the truth that he has become a consumable. What? When he heard Rei Minkai's words, Shiro Amada couldn't help but become anxious. Chapter 314. Nameless City. Rei Minkai didn't know the name of this small city located at the foot of the mountain. He only knew that the final battle that would decide everyone's fate was about to begin here. In the sky, groups of swordfish fighters were flying in formation towards the mountain, preparing to launch all the missiles they carried onto the enemy's head. Boom, boom, boom. The missiles and bombs that came down from the sky caused a series of explosions on the mountain, drowning out the various checkpoints and firepower points that were placed all over the mountain. Quick, quick, quick. Fill in the gaps. Don't let those Federation bastards attack. John's soldiers carried boxes of ammunition and shuttled back and forth amidst the tremors caused by the violent bombardment. Dust continuously fell from the ceiling above them as they delivered the ammunition to the firepower points. Boom! The moment a young John soldier delivered the ammunition box to a cannon turret, a beam of light suddenly broke through the thick defense of the cannon turret. In the blink of an eye, the entire cannon turret was engulfed in an explosion. General, we've lost too many soldiers. A John Major looked at the mountain that was almost drowned by the bombardment and said helplessly, "Request for reinforcements." If Yuri Kalini, who was in charge of the first line of defense and who had just retreated from Odessa, frowned. According to the current situation, even if they were to add in the power of Kenya's, they might not be able to completely repel the Federation's attack. But, according to the current situation, this was the only thing they could do. You guys are in charge of commanding. I'll go see Kenya's. This way, we might be able to gain more power to defend against the Federation's attack. Yes, General. In the increasingly violent bombardment, Yuri Kalini left the command center and walked towards the passageway leading to the base. However, he didn't know that this was the path of no return. At the same time, Rei Minkai's 8th Squad had also completed the previous assault mission and temporarily returned to the base where the main force was at, the large Pallet-class land artillery warship that was surrounded by many armored troops. Here, the Captain Xiao Dao had been waiting for a long time. 8th Squad, thank you for your hard work. You will now have 12 hours of rest. After that, a tough battle will be waiting for you. Yes, Captain. Although they were a little tired, the members of the 8th Squad still responded loudly to the island. Captain Amada and 2nd Lieutenant Rei Minkai, come with me. Yes. At first, Ray Minkai thought that the island would take him and Shiro Amada to the big platter-class land artillery warship, but in fact, the island took them to the edge of the forest behind the big platter-class warship. Captain Amada, you've done well this time. However, in the upcoming battle, I hope that you can focus on dealing with any changes. Can you do that? After looking left and right, Xiao Dao did not say much nonsense and directly told him his advice and worries. Shiro Amada was stunned for a moment before he understood what Xiao Dao meant. If it was in the past, perhaps this would not be a problem. However, after meeting Aina again in the snow mountain, Shiro Amada's heart had a layer of fog that could not be solved. Looking at the frowning Shiro Amada, Xiao Dao shook his head slightly and then turned to look at Ray Minkai. Second Lieutenant, the information you gave before has been approved by the headquarters. This general attack is the intention of the headquarters. Xiao Dao pointed at the swordfish that was whistling into the sky. Yes, this is what I should do, Captain. However, I'm afraid that just relying on the swordfish alone is not enough to force the enemy out of the mountain. When they entered the frontline base just now, Ray Minkai saw that other than the swordfish that was whistling into the sky, the rest of the MS troops were just maintaining a state of readiness to attack. They did not have any intention of attacking. And that's true. The attack of the MS troops will begin in 12 hours. After all, other than the 8th Squad, there are other troops that have not completed the mission of clearing out the surrounding enemies. Xiao Dao nodded and then explained the following arrangements. After 12 hours, the 8th Squad will act as the steel tank's bodyguard and clear out an area for the steel tank to bomb the mountain with peace of mind. Captain, the 8th Squad's combat area is in the city. That's the only terrain in the vicinity that can provide the steel tank with more cover. Although he had just arrived here, Shiro Amada already had a general understanding of the surrounding terrain. According to the arrangement, that's indeed the case. Xiao Dao nodded and said, of course. In the beginning, I hoped that the steel tank could attack in the surrounding jungle. However, if he did that, the steel tank's firepower would not be able to be fully unleashed due to the distance. Then I understand. The 8th Squad will fully cover the steel tank. After receiving a clear order, Shiro Amada's worries were swept away, and he responded loudly to Xiao Dao. Captain Amada, go ahead and make the arrangements. Yes. Shiro Amada left, but Ray Minkai stayed. As long as he saw the look in Xiao Dao's eyes, Ray Minkai knew that he had something to say to him. Second Lieutenant, Captain Amada will probably have to rely on you. Although Colonel Rhea did not say anything. In fact, Shiro Amada's previous actions were already suspected of violating military discipline. Whether he can leave the army peacefully after the war would depend on the upcoming battle. As usual, Xiao Dao went straight to the point and expressed his thoughts. This made Ray Minkai feel a little surprised. However, after thinking about it, this was a matter of course. According to the original trajectory, Shiro Amada was going to face execution. However, due to the death of Colonel Rhea in the final battle, no one pursued Shiro Amada's crimes at all. Coupled with Shiro Amada's disappearance, in the end, the matter was left unsettled. Yes, Captain, I will. Xiao Dao nodded and stepped forward to pat Ray Minkai's shoulder. Go, Second Lieutenant. This is the final battle. Whether this world can return to peace, perhaps it will depend on who wins this battle. Ray Minkai didn't answer Xiao Dao's question, because he knew that no matter who won this battle, this UC era would usher in a long period of war, civil strife, and other negative factors. Time passed by very quickly. On a normal day, 12 hours might be a long time. However, in this battlefield accompanied by the rumbling of artillery fire and the constant trembling of the earth, 12 hours was just a short moment. Time's up. 8th Squad, attack! Shiro Amada, who had been sitting in the Easy 8 for a long time, opened his eyes the moment the time arrived and loudly gave the order to attack. Therefore, in the roar of the machine, the 8th Squad, together with the steel tank squad that participated in this battle, rumbled and set off. At this time, under the protection of the mountain, in the underground base that was not affected by the fierce battle for the time being, Yuri Kailini, who was put aside by Kenyas for being busy for 12 hours, finally lost his patience due to the long period of time. Thus, he, who was originally a rash person, pushed away the orderly who was guarding at the side and strode out of the room. He looked left and right and casually caught a Guion soldier. "Hey, tell me, where's Kenyas' room? After leaving me here for so long, he definitely isn't in his office." Under Yuri Kalini's coercion, the soldier who was tightly grabbed by the collar swallowed his saliva, but didn't dare to reveal the location of Kenyas' room. However, his flickering eyes had already told Yuri Kalini the answer. "Oomph, coward. With such a boss, your subordinates aren't necessarily any braver." After getting the answer he wanted, Yuri Kairini forcefully pushed the pitiful Guion soldier away and strode towards Jinna's room with an aura that no one dared to block. "Kenyas, give me an explanation. Do you have any reinforcements for her?" Following the loud sound of the door being kicked, the angry voice of Yuri Kailini followed closely. However, his excited manner of questioning was immediately silenced when he saw the people and decorations in the room. "Cynthia?" At first glance, Yuri saw his own secretary tied to a chair. Her face, which used to be beautiful and pitiful, was now pale. "Kenyas, what did you do to Cynthia?" The angry Yuri clenched his fists. At the same time, he let out an angry roar and forcefully stomped on the ground, pouncing towards Kenyas like a ferocious tiger. However, just as his mountain-like body leaped up, a powerful force descended from the sky and suppressed him. "Don't move, General Yuri. I don't have that much control over the power of this armor. If you're not careful, you might be crushed to death by it." As the lazy voice sounded, Yuri, who was suppressed on the ground, raised his head and glared at the person who pressed him to the ground. "You, Miss Q, why? Why would you help Kenyas?" Although the figure in front of him was wrapped in a strange pilot uniform, Yuri could clearly see who that beautiful face belonged to. "Why? Why am I not here? General Yuri, you have to know that the reason I'm here is because the commander wanted me to help complete Apsaris. And you, General Yuri Kairini, because of a momentary failure, you asked the commander to abolish the Apsaris plan." Speaking until here, Miss Q faintly sighed. "Although it's common for men to like the new and dislike the old, what you're doing now is making things difficult for me. General Yuri, maybe you don't know, but right now I need to rely on Apsaras to fight a counterattack. You, Miss Q, right now, our John situation isn't optimistic. Only by using all of our power can we get John through this crisis. Don't tell me you don't know." Yuri struggled a few times and was shocked to find that he couldn't break free from Miss Q's slender hands. What kind of monster is this?" "Don't move, General Yuri. Kenya still has something to say to you." Miss Q gently lifted her chin. Kenya's, who was standing next to the unconscious Cynthia, slowly opened his mouth. "Yuri Kairini, I already learned from your secretary that you didn't ask Commander Killian to abolish Apsaris." Yuri, who was pressed on the ground, sneered. "So what? There's no how. It's just that my Apsaris was still completed in the end. It's all thanks to your secretary. Otherwise, I would have been misled by your lies and lost the opportunity to complete Apsaris." Kenyas reached out and picked up the syringe on the table and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "What a surprise. Yuri, don't you think so? No matter how loyal and infatuated your secretary is with you, she's still lost to this thing. Moreover, with such an infatuated secretary, why do you still harass my sister?" Yuri. Looking at Yuri, who was easily pressed on the ground by Miss Q, Kenyas didn't feel sad or happy. He only calmly spoke his thoughts. "What? Does your heart ache? Or are you jealous?" Yuri glanced at Cynthia, who was still unconscious, and retorted in a cold voice. "Oomph. Think whatever you want. Right now, I just want to complete Apsaras. Miss Q, sorry to trouble you." Kenyas nodded slightly at Miss Q, then turned and left the room. "What headache, General Yuri? If you weren't so reckless to abolish Apsaras, I wouldn't have gone to this extent. Actually, I'm quite optimistic about you. Yuri suddenly felt the weight on his back lighten and immediately stood up from the ground. What do you want? Miss Q, if it's just a complete Apsaras, I can give up my previous request. I only hope that after this, you can send reinforcements to buy us some time to retreat. Without a doubt, Yuri compromised, but it was too late. Too late. General Yuri. Screech. A sound so fast that it was almost imperceptible, followed by sharp pain. This was the last thing Yuri Kairini felt in this world. Da-da-da-da-da. The roar of the 100mm machine gun in Gao Da's hand constantly reverberated in the city. Boom! Under the joint attack of Lei Mingkai and Sandis, a land-based Zugatu that was unable to retreat in time was eventually turned into a beehive and exploded with a loud boom. Target area cleared. We may be able to take a break. Sandis. Rei Mingkai looked at the surrounding situation, then sent a request for information to Eladoya while also speaking to Sandis. But we still can't relax. This is already the front line. Sandis nodded, but he could not take his eyes off the hillside that had been bombarded by the bombardment since the beginning. From the billowing smoke and fierce flames, it was not difficult to see that even in the face of fierce bombardment from the Federation Army, the hillside was still able to maintain a certain degree of resistance. Rei Mingkai nodded and agreed with Sandis' words. Captain, this is Rei Mingkai. The steel tank has entered the predetermined position. After that, Rei Mingkai's attention shifted from the hillside to the surrounding buildings. If Rei Mingkai remembered correctly, in the next battle, Norris, the man known as the Tiger King, would most likely appear. However, this time, his opponent should only be himself, Rei Mingkai. Chapter 315. Target confirmed. For MS, 1 Zaga 1 and the rest Zog 2. Location, middle of the village. West of the village, on a hillside at least 10,000 meters away, Karen was sitting in the cockpit, constantly trying to zoom the aiming magnification of her plane to the maximum. For planes? I got it. Karen, stay at your original position and wait. Wait for my signal. Amada Shiro opened the back door of the Type 74 hover truck speeding in the rainforest. He held the roulette that was constantly releasing communication lines in one hand and the headset in the other hand to give his orders. Then Amada Shiro shouted, Second Lieutenant. Can you hear me? Rei Mingkai immediately responded, Roger. Now adjusting the sniper's aim. Amada Shiro's strategy was simple, or it could be said that there was no change at all. The strategy he used was exactly the same as Rei Mingkai knew. There was no change at all. In other words, Amada Shiro still chose to sneak into the village alone and carry out his rescue plan. Rei Mingkai had no doubt about this, and even took the sniper's task into his own hands. After all, compared to Karen's difficult hardware conditions, Rei Mingkai's side had better hardware and software support. Woo! When are we going to kill that abominable miss? Q. Squatting on the control panel, the white cat State Zero, still in a state of anger, kept growling angrily. Looking at its appearance, it was probably still brooding about the explosion of the fragments in the X-3 engine. Kai, we can quickly kill these for broken planes. We must find Miss Q as soon as possible and kill her. With both eyes staring at the 4 Zagas on the screen, each facing different directions, the white cat State Zero waved its claws. That depends on whether your strength can kill them in a short time. Rei Mingkai smiled and kicked the question back to the white cat State Zero. Roar. Let's watch. The white cat State Zero let out a low growl and merged into the screen in front of Rei Mingkai. The next moment, the sniper scope, which had been enlarged to the maximum magnification, suddenly changed again. It enlarged again and again until the crosshair on the screen firmly locked on a Jagu 1, who was holding a 120mm machine gun in his hand. State 0, aim your crosshair at the enemy. The enemy's fire control radar will alert you. As soon as Rei Mingkai spoke, the white cat's impatient voice sounded. You talk too much. I didn't activate the lockdown at all. Right now, I'm just looking at this broken machine. Rei Mingkai was speechless after hearing what the white cat said. Indeed, Right now, the White Cat State Zero could be said to be one with the fourth land fighter, Gauda. Naturally, it could use all the equipment on this land fighter, Gauda. As long as it wanted, it could control the fourth land fighter, Gauda, autonomously. He picked up the beam rifle in his hand and shot Jagu 1, who was locked onto the crosshair at the moment. This was part of the power that the White Cat State Zero possessed, function fusion. It could fuse its existence with some suitable body to control the body and to a certain extent enhance the body. However, this power could not be used as it wished. In the past, Ray Minkai tried to encourage the White Cat State Zero to fuse with a mass-produced KMF body such as Sunderland. As a result, he was slapped back by the White Cat State Zero. So far, only the White Cat State Zero knew that it could fuse with those bodies. Time ticked by. Under the gaze of Ray Minkai, the crosshair on the screen changed from the initial Jagu 1 with a 120mm machine gun to another Jagu with a 100mm machine gun, and finally landed on the Jagu with a shield that seemed to be seized from Jim on the east side. This broken pilot is not a good person. At the same time the crosshair landed on the Jagu with the shield, the White Cat State Zero's voice sounded. Moreover, the slowly moving crosshair did not move. It seemed that the White Cat State Zero seemed to regard the shield, Jagu 1, as the target of the first shot. There seems to be a change. Karen, Sandusky, get ready. Suddenly, Ray Minkai was able to see the situation inside the village from the screen that was enhanced by the White Cat State Zero. He found a clue. Second Lieutenant, what did you find? Karen and Sandusky were shocked and immediately put their hands on the joystick. Although the sniping mission had been taken by Ray Minkai, Karen and Sandusky still needed to rush to the maximum shooting range immediately after Ray Minkai fired the first shot to intercept the enemy who might escape from the sniping. It seems that Jagu has a conflict with the villagers. TSK, the captain has not arrived in the village yet. Ray Minkai's eyes narrowed slightly. Now, in front of his eyes, fate was repeating itself. The Jagu with the shield caught the girl who was holding the rice bowl with both hands. It seemed that he wanted to give the girl a surprise scare. However, in the next second, the Jagu 1 with a 100mm machine gun standing behind the shield, Jagu 1 raised the machine gun in his hand and aimed at his teammate. It's useless. Seeing this scene, Ray Minkai shook his head secretly and then said, State Zero, prepare to change the target. Someone will take care of the shield, Jagu 1. Now, we must prevent unnecessary casualties. TSK, seeing that the cute girl is about to be crushed to death by the huge robot, Guy, a man who claims to be the Queen's guardian knight, is actually not doing anything. What made Ray Minkai surprised was that State White Cat Zero seemed to be fixated on Jagu, who was holding shield. It looked like it would not give up until it got rid of it. Hey, State Zero, we can't fire the first shot. Ray Minkai frowned and persuaded the White Cat State Zero. Woo! Oomph. After the White Cat State Zero whimpered for a while, it snorted coldly. Then, the crosshair on the screen slowly shifted from Zagu's shield to Zagu, who was standing in front of the most conspicuous house in the village and holding a 120mm machine gun. In the eyes of the White Cat State Zero, only the shield Jagu 1 and the Jagu, standing with his back facing the house, could pose a threat to the humans in the village. The former was because the White Cat State Zero felt that the pilot was not a good person. The latter was because once he was attacked, he would immediately activate the backpack and escape the village with a long-distance jump. At that time, the house located below the backpack would be engulfed by the flames of the backpack. Guy, it's starting. Can I attack? The attack that he had been expecting happened. The moment Ray Minkai saw the shield, Jagu holding the poor girl in his hands, he knew that the battle was about to start. This was not it. As the angry Chi-Chi threw the rice bowl in her hand into the open cockpit of Jagu 1 and was thrown towards the house below from mid-air, a single anti-armor missile flew into Jagu 1's cockpit from below and fired the first shot. Boom! A burst of sparks exploded in Jagu, who threw Chi-Chi away, fell down with thick black smoke. Immediately afterward, A group of villagers who had been impatient for a long time rushed out of the house with their individual anti-armor missiles, each occupying different attack positions. They launched anti-armor missiles at the titan-like Zaga one in front of them. The villagers' will for revenge was hot, but Jagu's pilots were experienced veterans. No matter what angle the villagers fired the single anti-armor missiles, they were all easily dodged by the remaining Jagu pilots. Finally, the scene that Ray Minkai was waiting for appeared. Under the siege of the villagers, although they could avoid the missile attack, John knew that if they continued to stay in the village, they would not have a good ending. Hence, he began to retreat. At this moment, it was the moment that the White Cat State Zero had been waiting for. Go to hell. Trash. State White Cat Zero let out a low growl, and the long-prepared beam rifle in the hands of No. 4 Landfighter Gundam suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. In the blink of an eye, the Jagu, with its back facing the house and slightly bent legs, ready to perform a long-distance jump, was hit by the particle beam from 10,000 meters away. Boom! The penetrated Jagu fell to the ground. The single eye on its head that always brought fear to ordinary people flickered a few times and fell into dead silence. What? Sniper? Or directly hit the cockpit? How is it possible? The female pilot who was piloting Jagu 1 looked at her teammate in horror. That was the hole behind Jagu that was emitting black smoke. That was Jagu's cockpit. No matter how she imagined, she could not imagine that there would be someone who could accurately snipe Jagu's cockpit from 10,000 meters away. However, even though she was shocked, reality did not give her even a second to continue being shocked by this sudden sniper attack. Because, another beam of particle shot through the air. This time, the target of the particle beam was not the Jagu 1 that the female pilot was piloting, but the Jagu that was approaching her. Boom! The particle beam flashed and disappeared. It was the cockpit again. Looking at the cockpit that had been pierced through, the female pilot's face was filled with shock and horror. She could not believe everything in front of her eyes, but it really happened in front of her eyes. Someone really piloted an unknown body and accurately hit the cockpit from 10,000 meters away. After all, this wasn't some immobile target. If there was just a little bit of distance, Jagu's nuclear furnace would have been hit, triggering a nuclear explosion that was enough to raze this village and even this tropical rainforest to the ground. What kind of monster did we provoke? A bitter smile appeared at the corner of the female pilot's mouth. She even controlled the machine gun in her hand to raise the machine gun in her hand, shooting whistling bullets in the direction where the particle beam appeared. However, in the next second, a particle beam broke through the air and flooded the female pilot's vision. Boom! Amidst the loud sound of Jagu falling to the ground, countless clouds of dust were sent flying high into the air. However, the surrounding villagers didn't care that the flying clouds of dust would dirty their clothes and bodies. Instead, they clamored wildly as they climbed onto Jagu's body and cheered. Amidst the crowd, Amada Shiro, who helped Chi-Chi out of the house, looked at the battle that had stopped around him in surprise. He could not help but be stunned. In the end, he also shook his head and sighed secretly. He did not expect that Raiminkai's action would be so fast. He killed these few Jagu in a few seconds. Captain, sorry, the situation was urgent. Raiminkai's communication was also connected to Amada Shiro's communication at this moment. Amada Shiro sighed secretly and shook his head. After looking around at the surrounding villages and villagers, except for some houses that had collapsed due to the impact, he replied, "No, Second Lieutenant. You did not do anything wrong. At least, we protected the villagers in the village." Yes, Amada Shiro did not say that he also wanted to save John. However, in the face of John's complete destruction, Amada Shiro finally chose to protect the villagers and the village. Perhaps, at this moment, it seemed that Amada Shiro's ideals might have changed a little. The turmoil in the village had come to an end. Under the influence of Ray Minkai, Chi-Chi did not lose her father, nor did she lose her village. Perhaps, for Chi-Chi, this was already the luckiest and best result. Next, only Amada Shiro and Ina's matter was left. After quickly resolving this small disturbance, Amada Shiro said goodbye to Chi-Chi, who wanted to come back but was hindered by the village affairs. After that, he rushed back to the station with Ray Minkai and the others. Captain Amada, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, your private plane is parked over there. The mission has been arranged. For the rest, I can only trouble you to rest for a while on the plane. Seeing that the 8th team returned to the station, the liaison sent by the Captain Kojima handed the latest mission to Amada Shiro and Ray Minkai. After opening the document, Ray Minkai chuckled. Captain, it seems that your body has been repaired. Amada Shiro glanced at the document and nodded silently. Yes. Now, I should be able to reunite with Ina. EZ8. This new body modified from Gouda, which was in a state of great destruction, finally went offline and was sent to Amada Shiro. This also meant that the next battle would inevitably take place in the mountain where Ina and Jinhas were hiding. 8th team, everyone, get ready to board the plane. Our next mission is at the forefront. Don't die. Putting down the document in his hand, Amada Shiro said loudly to his teammates. Looking at the light in Amada Shiro's eyes, the corner of Ray Minkai's mouth curled up, and he suddenly shouted, Go and get Ina Sakhaline back. Hearing this, Amada Shiro, Karen, Sandus, and Neguri were all taken aback, and they didn't seem to have reacted yet. However, in the next second, a voice that hadn't been heard for a long time followed closely behind Lei Minkai's voice. Go and get Ina Sakhaline, our captain's lover. Everyone looked back and found that it was Eladoya, who hopped out of the jeep with crutches. His actions were rather comical as he waved his right hand and repeated what he had just said. Go and get Ina Sakhaline back. So, in the midst of Eladoya's comical actions, Karen, Sandus, and Neguri also repeatedly shouted this slogan, leaving Amada Shiro speechless for a while. In the end, he could only raise his hand to his teammates and thank Ray Minkai. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Let's go. Captain Amada, if we delay any longer, Ina might have an accident. Yes. So, Eladoya, are you back to visit us? Or are you participating in the mission? Amada Shiro nodded and turned to look at Eladoya, who was trying to sneak into the team. Yes, Captain. Your subordinate feels that his injury is no longer a problem. I request to participate in the mission. Everyone looked at Eladoya's injured leg suspiciously. Their eyes were full of, can you really do it? Eladoya, can't you see that your leg is still bandaged? However, Amada Shiro nodded in agreement with Eladoya's expression. Eladoya, return to the team. Let's go. Let's go. For Ina. Chapter 316. At an altitude of 10,000 meters, the silver-gray Media transport plane carrying the 8th team was quickly heading towards the scheduled landing area. As the distance to the scheduled landing area continued to shorten, there was not much time left for the 8th team. Now, Shiro Amada, who had arranged all the combat missions, was sitting in the cockpit of his newly acquired EZ-8 Gouda, holding the clock pendant in silence. Shiro Amada didn't fully believe Ray Minkai's words, but to a certain extent, he agreed with Ray Minkai's words. Because in the dark, Shiro Amada had a feeling that if he doesn't get to Ina as soon as possible, there will be a regret between him and Ina. Beep beep. While Shiro Amada was deep in thought, the communication signal from the 8th team's team channel rang. It's me. What's the matter? Shiro Amada put away the clock pendant and connected the communication. Everyone, we are about to land at Alpha Point, and this goal hasn't changed. The only thing we have to worry about is that we may run into the remnants of Gion's army retreating from Odessa. Ray Minkai didn't waste any time and directly spoke his guess. What? Gion's remnants? The battle at Odessa is over? Eladoya, who had been lying in the hospital for a while, didn't seem to care much about the progress of the battle. When he heard Ray Minkai mention the progress of Odessa, he suddenly exclaimed, "Yes, Eladoya! Now, the war between our Federation and Guion may have entered the final critical moment." Carrie Leong crossed her arms and closed her glasses slightly, trying to adjust her mental state to the best state. In the end, the reason why Karen acted abnormally was that the airborne combat tactic used in this combat mission was the first time Karen used it. Karen wasn't sure whether it could be completed or not. Therefore, with the help of the topic brought up by Ray Minkai, Karen threw all the fear in her heart at Eladoya without pity. For a while, the entire channel was filled with the sound of Karen scolding Eladoya. This change made Shiro Amada smile. Even so, the mission still had to be carried out. Okay, everyone, what the second lieutenant has described, I think, is very likely to happen. No one knew what was in the clouds below the Medea and what was flying towards our destination. Therefore, you must be careful. Yes, it was time to land and fight. There are still 5 minutes before the landing. Everyone from the 8th Squad, prepare to enter the coffin. Medea's pilot gave a thumbs up to Shiro Amada, Ray Minkai, and the others on the screen before opening Medea's cabin door. As soon as the cabin door opened, the violent airflow and the high altitude suddenly rushed into the cabin. In the blink of an eye, the paper and garbage that could not be fixed in the cabin were all rolled out of the belly of the plane and crazily scattered from the high altitude to the ground. In this violent airflow, the Type 74 hover truck driven by Karen, Gauta, Eladoya, and Neguri were the first to be released from the belly of Medea. The moment the buffer umbrella opened, Karen, who had descended to a certain height, suddenly found that a behemoth appeared below her marine Gauda. And this behemoth was the force that Ray Minkai mentioned before, which may be owned by the remnants of Guion's army on Odessa's side, Kawa's mother. Captain, second lieutenant. Now, Kawa appeared below me. As soon as Karen saw the huge body of Kawa's mother, she suddenly took a breath of cold air and couldn't help but shout for her teammates. It really appeared. Captain, I'll go first. When Ray Minkai, who was originally behind Sandus, heard the appearance of Kawa's mother, he immediately took the lead and forcibly squeezed Sandus, who was supposed to set off next, to the back. Boom! Following the loosening of the gears holding the Gundam No. 4 in place, the Gundam No. 4 immediately moved backwards under the drag of the cushioning umbrella until it flew out of the belly of the Medea mech's second lieutenant. Amada Shiro looked at Marine Gauda, who descended first, and a trace of helplessness emerged in his heart. Yes, he knew that if Marine Gauda took the lead, the remnants of the army on this Kawa's mother were likely to suffer casualties, or even be completely wiped out. Amada Shiro didn't want to see such an outcome. After staying with Aina in the snow mountain for a night and seeing the cruelty of the soldiers of the Federation and Guion to each other, an unrealistic ideal had been lingering in Amada Shiro's mind. It's just that he couldn't put this idea into practice at all, because before he took action, Ray Minkai always took care of things as soon as possible. And the current Kawa's mother was probably the same. Boom! The huge parachute suddenly opened the moment Gundam No. 4 was far away from Medea. Kai, what do you want to do? This body is not Lancelot. It can't fly. Even if I fuse with it, I can't make it grow a pair of wings. After taking down 3 Zagus in a row, the anger of the White Cat State Zero had mostly subsided and was lying lazily on the console. You don't even need to learn how to fly to deal with this clumsy big bird. Ray Minkai smiled gently and instantly kicked back the doubts of the White Cat State Zero. And the White Cat State Zero glanced at Ray Minkai, curled its lips, and didn't speak anymore. Right now, it was estimated that only this woman, Miss Q, was able to incite the flames of hatred within State Zero. Other than that, the White Cat State Zero just wanted to lie down properly. The thick dark clouds quickly swept past Marine Gauda from both sides, and the outline of the Kawa's mother below became clearer. Moreover, Marine Gauda's electronic eyes also captured the figure of Karen who was fighting with the Kawa's mother. At first glance, Ray Minkai breathed a sigh of relief. Due to his warning in advance, Karen, who was prepared, did not passively accept the fate of being violently beaten by the anti-aircraft firepower of the Kawa's mother. Instead, she did her best to use all means possible to win a way out for herself. Karen, hold on. I'm coming. In the sky, Marine Gauda raised the beam rifle in his hand and quickly locked onto the Kawa's mother below. Beams of light burst out from the dark sky above the Kawa's mother's head, constantly brushing past the sides of the Kawa's mother's body. Among them, several beams of light directly hit the center of the Kawa's mother's body. Boom! The parts penetrated by the beams of light burst into violent explosions on the spot, throwing pieces of debris into the air. They flew past the sides of Marine Gauda, driven by Karen, and then fell powerlessly into the tropical rainforest below. Boom! Boom! Due to the impact of Marine Gauda's beam attack, the anti-aircraft firepower net previously launched by Marine Gauda against Karen suddenly shattered and no longer posed any threat to Karen. Karen, open the parachute now. Eladoya, who was anxiously watching the battle here, couldn't help but remind Karen after seeing that she was out of danger. Karen, get out of here. Leave this stupid bird to me. During this short exchange of blows, Marine Gauda took advantage of the opportunity when the anti-aircraft firepower net of the Kawa's mother fell into a state of weakness. He descended from the sky in one fell swoop and landed firmly on the back of the Kawa's mother. Kawa's mother? This is the first time I've come into close contact with this big thing since the steel puller competition. Looking at the Kawa's mother under his feet, Ray Minkai couldn't help but let out a sigh. However, in the next moment, Marine Gauda suddenly took off the meteor hammer hanging on his back and swung it hard, smashing the wide-open hatch on the left rear side of Marine Gauda into pieces. Crash! With a move of Marine Gauda's hand, the meteor hammer rose into the air and slowly rotated with Marine Gauda as the center. Who? As the meteor hammer spun rapidly, the John soldiers who tried to poke their heads out from other hatches to launch a surprise attack on the Gundam No. 4 were being pushed back by the strong wind at an altitude of 10,000 meters, or the storm formed by the rotation of the meteor hammer. This is not on land. You guys are too naive. Ray Minkai glanced at the open hatch behind Marine Gauda and sneered. Then, with a move of his hand, the rapidly rotating meteor hammer struck everywhere like a viper out of its hole, smashing all the open hatches. It also pushed back the John soldiers who were trying to poke their heads out and launch a special attack on Marine Gauda. Boom! Suddenly, the second engine that provided surging power to the Kawa's mother produced an explosion that was enough to make the Kawa's mother die. However, in the flames caused by this explosion, Marine Gauda, who had already occupied the back of the Kawa's mother, raised the beam rifle held in his left hand. Without a doubt, the Kawa's mother, which had lost all anti-air firepower points, and even the emergency passage for personnel to enter and exit the back of the aircraft, was undoubtedly a fish on the chopping block for Marine Gauda at this moment. Sorry, I don't want to encounter any accidents on the road ahead. And I'm not Shiro Amada. Ray Minkai didn't want to encounter the commander of this Kawa's mother, which was a commander of the Agela tank he would encounter next. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, and in order to reach the base hidden in the depths of the mountains as soon as possible, Ray Minkai had to eliminate any unstable factors that would affect the formation. Click! As soon as the trigger was pulled, a particle beam burst out from the muzzle of the beam rifle in the hand of Marine Gauda, and it instantly penetrated the bridge of the Kawa's mother. Zap! In the next moment, Ray Minkai saw sparks jumping from the hole in the bridge of the Kawa's mother, and an explosion that was enough to destroy the Kawa's mother began. Boom! The first thing that pounced on the destruction was the head of the Kawa's mother where the bridge was located. The violent explosion spread at an extremely fast speed, so fast that even the Gyuing soldiers inside the Kawa's mother did not have time to react before they were swallowed by the sudden explosion. Marine Gauda had already jumped away from the back of the Kawa's mother the moment the bridge exploded. He allowed the unique, strong airflow to push him away from the Kawa's mother, and quietly watched the destruction of the Kawa's mother. until the altitude alert of Marine Gauda's equipment sounded. Ray Minkai pressed the button to open the parachute and prepare to spray the buffer. "Is that it? What stupid bird?" The white cat, State Zero, who was lying on the console, laughed coldly. After all, this Kawa's mother did not bring any escorts. Otherwise, we would not have been able to finish it off so easily. Compared to White Cat's disdain, State Zero did not care. Lei Minkai, on the other hand, saw it clearly. "Oomph. So it's just luck?" White Cat snorted. "Well, maybe you can say that." After Ray Minkai shook his head, he ignored White Cat and pressed the communication button. "Captain, the Kawa's mother has been eliminated. Karen, you should have landed safely." "I'm fine." "Captain, Karen landed safely. Now, sending the coordinates." Beep beep. Karen's coordinates were sent, but Ray Minkai was stunned. According to the coordinate information shown on the map, Karen's landing location was not near the water, but in an open space on the edge of a dense forest. What's the situation? Karen did not land near the water. There was no problem with Karen's safe landing, but the landing location was a big problem. In Ray Minkai's memory, Karen landed near the water, and her head monitor was knocked off by Turtle Lord, who suddenly jumped out of the water. In the end, she was nicknamed the King of Falling Ground and Jim's head. "Oomph. I suddenly smelled salted fish." For some reason, White Cat lying on the console suddenly opened its glasses and looked at the screen. Subconsciously, Ray Minkai followed the gaze of White Cat and found that the scenery presented on the screen turned out to be a lake under the beautiful sunrise. Salted fish. Lake. The moment these two words were connected in Ray Minkai's mind, Ray Minkai's right hand moved, and number 4 Marine Gao immediately raised the beam rifle in his hand and fired at the lake in front of him. The moment the hot particle beam broke through the water surface, it triggered a violent explosion on the spot, blasting a water column tens of meters high on the calm water surface. Splash. Among the splashes of water falling from midair, the meteor hammer in the left hand of number 4 Marine Gauda moved. Boom! The spark ejector on the meteor hammer burst out, propelling the meteor hammer into a black lightning bolt and plunging into the splashes of water falling from midair. Bang! All of a sudden, the sound of metal clashing rang out. At the same time, a black shadow also emerged from the splashes of water. With a gust of wind and splashes, it brazenly struck at number 4 Marine Gao. Bang! There was another loud noise. The meteor hammer that returned in time blocked the enemy's attack. In the next second, Ray Minkai also saw the figure of the enemy who launched the surprise attack. Turtle Lord? What a coincidence! He actually became Karen's substitute? Chapter 3:17. Amidst the splashes, the dark brown, round MS in the water stretched out its thick left arm, and at the same time, closed its open claws into a sharp weapon and slammed it towards the monitor on number 4 Gauda's head. However, this attack was blocked by the replayed meteor hammer. Hua hua hua. Under the impact of the meteor hammer, Gue Ba's sturdy left arm was sent flying. Gue Ba's entire body was pushed back a few steps, and he once again fell into the embrace of the lake amidst the splashes of water. What a strong salted fish smell! White Cat State Zero's nose twitched, and it made a rather disgusted sound. Don't cats like to eat dried fish? Salted fish, isn't it just right? Lei Minkai pulled the joystick in his left hand and retracted the number 4 Land Fighter Gundam's meteor hammer. At the same time, he mocked him a little. "Shut up. I'm not a kitten. I'm a lion." White Cat State Zero grinned, revealing 2 sharp teeth, and looked at Ray Minkai with a ferocious expression and made a low growl of protest. Good, good, good. Then, our holy beast Lord Bear, how about we take care of this salted fish? In the face of White Cat State Zero's frightening performance, Ray Minkai only glanced at it, and then familiarly stroked the kitten's fluff. Number 4 Gao Da's left hand moved, and the meteor hammer that was retracted struck again. Under the propelling of the rocket launcher, it struck out like lightning. In the lake, Turtle Lord, who fell in the water, turned over and actually dodged the impact of the meteor hammer. When a meteor hammer hit the surface of the water and set off a burst of sparks, it plunged into the water. Splash! The iron chain tightened, and the meteor hammer once again returned to the hands of number 4 Gouda. But Turtle Lord's figure had disappeared from the water surface. Ran away. White Cat State Zero saw Turtle Lord's figure disappear and immediately stood up from the console and looked around at the lake that had returned to calmness. Probably, Ray Minkai shrugged and sighed. Looks like the enemy isn't a reckless person. After failing his attack, he turned around and ran away. You must know that once the Turtle Tyrant goes ashore, its battle prowess will drop by quite a bit. Going down, White Cat State Zero turned around and looked at Ray Minkai. It knew that this land warfare Gao was able to engage in underwater combat. However, its combat power in the water could not be compared to Turtle Lord, who specialized in underwater combat. After thinking about it, Ray Minkai decided not to dwell on this matter any longer. Since the other party wanted to use the water escape method to escape and even lure Lu Zhan Gouda into the water, Ray Minkai naturally wouldn't follow the other party's intention and let the other party succeed. Let's go. Since this Turtle Lord wanted to stay in this lake, then let it stay as long as it wanted. We still have other things to do. Buzz buzz. In the light of the rising sun, number 4 land warfare Gouda slowly retreated a few steps under Ray Minkai's control until the distance from the shore was 100 meters away. Then, he slowly turned the muzzle, pointing at the lake, and prepared to turn around and leave. Splash! Suddenly, the moment number 4 land warfare Gouda completely turned his back to the lake, a water column exploded. Moreover, several flames also rushed out of the water column at the same time, dragging a long, grayish-white tail of smoke as they pounced on number 4 land warfare Gouda. It's coming. This was a surprise attack, but it was also the surprise attack that Ray Minkai was looking forward to. In the previous stalemate, Ray Minkai was worried that the other party would decisively implement the strategy of failing to hit, immediately retreat, and leave number 4 land warfare Gouda behind, and quickly retreat under the cover of the lake. However, the enemy did not do that. Instead, he walked step by step towards a situation that Ray Minkai was looking forward to. The sneak attack was launched. Splash! The chains in the hands of number 4 land warfare Gouda rattled, and the meteor hammer, once again propelled by the rocket ejector, drew an arc in the air and rushed behind number 4 land warfare Gouda at an extremely fast speed. In a brutal and unreasonable way, he blew up all the flames that pounced on number 4 land warfare Gouda. Boom, boom, boom. In a continuous explosion, number 4 land warfare Gouda waved his right hand and forcibly dispersed the thick smoke generated by the explosion with the beam rifle in his hand. However, at the moment when the thick smoke dispersed, Turtle Lord's closed claws rushed in front of Gouda, while the thick smoke dispersed and Ray Minkai's vision had just recovered. Number 4 land warfare Gouda was in danger. However, Ray Minkai was not in a hurry. He moved his hands and feet alternately. Number 4 land warfare Gouda actually lowered his body and let Turtle Lord's sharp claws graze the left side of his head at a dangerous distance. He barely dodged this attack. However, this was only number 4 land warfare Gouda's defense. The counterattack was still to come. Turtle Lord's sharp claws hit the left side of number 4 land warfare Gouda's head. A black shadow rushed from below into the gap between the two sides and went straight to Turtle Lord's head from bottom to top. Bang! A loud and clear sound of metal colliding rang out. Gue Ba's body was once again sent flying back with a loud bang. And the thing that sent Turtle Tyrant flying was the meteor hammer that had been waiting for the right moment to strike. Boom! Turtle Lord powerlessly tumbled down in midair, and only stopped after hitting several large trees. It was not until it stood up again that the mech piloting Turtle Lord realized that Turtle Lord's electronic eyes had become a pile of broken garbage. The screen in front of him had also become a meaningless snowflake. Oh no. In the next second, a blazing light melted the snowflake screen in front of him. Then, in the blink of an eye, the world of the mech pilot turned into a vast expanse of white, symbolizing the scene of death. Oof. Finally dead. Looking at the hole that was still showing the dead eye, White Cat State Zero snorted coldly and lay back on the control panel, showing a lazy look as usual. Let's go. This time, Ray Minkai really piloted number 4 Land Warfare Gouda and left. Gue Ba's appearance wasn't the end of this battle. It was just an insignificant interlude. In a further place, Ray Minkai knew that the woman, whom White Cat State Zero called Miss Q, must be plotting something. Ray Minkai must get there before she succeeds and try to foil her plan. This is Shiro Amada. Teammate, quickly gather at Alpha 1 coordinate. Now, there's not much time left for us to move to Beta. Understood. After responding to Shiro Amada's call, Ray Minkai glanced at the silent Turtle Lord and piloted number 4 Land Warfare Gouda to Alpha 1 coordinate. Time was running out. Deep in the mountains, Norris, whose head was still wrapped in bandages, was guarding outside Ina Sakaline's room, waiting for the treatment inside to end. A few days ago, when Ina was preparing to assist the newly disconnected Apu Salis in the boot test, she suddenly fainted, shocking everyone present. At the same time, it also caused Kenyas, who was standing on the control panel, to immediately order the doctor to conduct a comprehensive physical examination on Ina. The results of the treatment that caused Ina to suddenly faint might be out soon. The door opened. The first to walk out was the doctor, the nurse, and finally Kenyas and the guest of honor, Miss Q. Sir Kenyas, madam, how is Miss Ina's body? Norris, who was worried about Ina's body, didn't hesitate and immediately asked when he saw everyone walk out of the room. Kenyas glanced at the doctor and nodded. Only then did the doctor speak. Colonel Norris, don't worry. After a few days of observation, Miss Ina is just overly fatigued. Now, she only needs to rest well to recover. Just overly fatigued. Even though he was a little confused, Norris finally nodded and saluted to the doctor and nurse as a sign of gratitude. Thank you for your hard work. Doctor, no, this is what I should do. Then, Sir Kenyas, madam, and Colonel Norris, I will go back to arrange for Miss Ina's recovery. Okay, go. Doctor, I will leave everything to you. Kenyas nodded and raised his hand to signal the doctor to leave, then looked at Norris. Norris, Ina is awake right now. If you want to visit her, it is best to do so now. Yes. Thank you very much, Sir Kenyas, for your permission. Now, I will go see Miss Ina. After saluting again, Norris walked past Kenyas and Miss Q. He knocked on the door and walked into Ina's room. Bang! After the door was tightly shut, Miss Q's gaze finally retracted from the closed door and landed on Jenna's body. Why don't you tell him? Based on this man's personality, he will not cause any hindrance to your plan. On the contrary, he might even be of help to you. No, he is not my help. Norris Barkard's loyalty is not to me, Kenya Sakaline, but to my sister, Ina Sakaline. Kenya shook his head and expressed his opinion. On the eve of the plan's completion, Kenyas didn't want too many people to know and understand the plan he had been pouring his heart and soul into. Is that so? If that is the case, then do as you wish. Apsara's is about to be completed. I hope you can work harder. You must know that Guillaume can't hold on for much longer. Miss Q said with a smile that was not a smile. Guillaume may fail, but my plan will not fail. Madam, just watch. Kenyas' face was calm. He was not affected by Miss Q's words at all. Oh, is that so? At this moment, just as Miss Q was about to continue probing Kenyas, an emergency call interrupted everything. Report. General Yuri Kailini sent an emergency call. The moment Kenyas took the document from the communications soldier's hand, his calm face suddenly became interesting. Miss Q, who noticed something was wrong, grabbed the document from Kenyas' hand and looked at it. She immediately raised her eyebrows. Oh, sure enough, it was just as I expected. Kenyas, Guillaume's failure is probably irreversible. What should I do? Continue with your plan? Or give up on your plan and invest resources into saving more Guion army? Now, Miss Q knew that there were only two paths in front of Kenya's. One was to continue investing the remaining resources into the new Apsaras. The second was to give up on Apsaras and invest the remaining resources into reorganizing the defeated troops that were retreating from the surrounding areas. In the eyes of ordinary people, this might be a very difficult choice to make. But Miss Q knew that the man in front of her would make the choice without hesitation. Madam, once my plan succeeds, Guion will usher in the final victory. So, don't ask the question just now. Sure enough, Kenya's answer was just as Miss Q thought. He mercilessly chose his plan and gave up on the defeated troops that were gathered from the surrounding areas. What a merciless man. But don't forget, before that, among the defeated troops, there are still people who can threaten your plan. Since the fire was already burning, Miss Q didn't mind adding a few more pieces of firewood to the fire. Just as Miss Q finished her words, Kenya's expression suddenly became extremely unnatural. Yuri Kalini? There are not many people who could threaten his plan, and Yuri Kalini must be one of them. Madam, continue to observe the state of Apsaras. I hope that after Aina recovers, it can be activated as soon as possible. I know. You are indeed a merciless and cold-hearted man. At the same time, Norris sat by Ina's bed and remained silent, but a trace of concern could be seen in his eyes. After a long time, the veteran who had been through countless battles slowly spoke. Miss Ina, is your body all right? Ina nodded when she heard this and smiled faintly. I'm just tired. I'm sorry for making everyone worried. I'm sorry. No, Miss Ina, we don't care about this. As long as Miss Ina can get better, it's fine. Norris shook his head and said softly. Yes. Ina sighed and looked up at the paintings on the roof. I have to get better as soon as possible. Otherwise, the progress of Apsaras will be delayed. Looking at Ina, who was still concerned about Apsaras, even though she was lying on the bed, Norris opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He knew that Kenya's and Ina must be hiding something from him. But as a loyal veteran, Norris knew what he should do and what he shouldn't do. Therefore, when some bottom line was crossed, Norris was very passive. In the silence, Ina slowly moved her gaze to Norris' face. Norris, can you do me a favor? Norris paused and responded to Ina's request without hesitation. Please say it. Miss Ina, as long as it's your wish, I will definitely fulfill it, even if it means being crushed to pieces. No, Norris, I don't need you to do something so dangerous. Ina shook her head and slowly said her request. Norris, if something happens to this base, I hope that you can bring the injured people who are staying here back to the universe before that happens. Ina's request made Norris stunned. He didn't think that Ina would make such a request. This made Norris didn't know how to answer for a moment. As the garrison officer of this base, Norris had an obligation to live and die with this base. Furthermore, the mech developed by Kinnis was about to go offline. At such a critical moment, Ina actually asked him to take away the injured people in this base. Norris didn't answer, but Ina gave him an answer. Norris, I know this request is too willful, but I will create an opportunity for you to smoothly escape from this base. Ina said her promise while unconsciously touching her left arm that was wrapped in a long sleeve. This action was seen by Norris without reservation. Doubts flooded him like a tide. What gave Ina the ability to let the injured people escape from the Federation Army's powerful attack? That Apsaras? However, no matter how many doubts he had, Norris still nodded. I will. Miss Ina, I will make a promise with you. After I complete my promise with Miss Ina, I definitely won't, and I can't die. But at the same time, Miss Ina must fully and properly protect herself before that, and personally watch me bring everyone back to the universe. How about it, Norris? Norris's promise made Ina shocked. She couldn't imagine that Norris would make such a promise. Are you shocked? Miss Ina, the power that made you so brave and determined, it should be the power of love, right? It wasn't that I didn't understand love in the past, but after walking the path of a professional soldier, I became like this. I don't know what Sir Kenyas is afraid of, but I know that a power that can make Miss Ina change so much must be beautiful. So, Miss Ina, can you make a promise with me? Norris. Looks like I still don't know anything about my foster father, Norris. I didn't think that in the end, I would be comforted by you. Foster father? Norris was shocked, unable to believe his ears. The Miss Ina that he had always protected actually saw him as her foster father. This made him feel incomparably honored. I didn't think that Miss Ina would see me as her foster father. This is truly my honor. Then, in order to complete my promise with Miss Ina, I must now make some preparations. Miss Ina, before you complete your promise with me, please protect yourself. Norris was a man of his words. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already walked to the door, leaving his mountain-like back to Ina. Only when the door was shut and Norris' back was completely isolated from the outside world did Ina lower her head and slowly pull up her long sleeve, revealing her left arm that was wrapped by a strange device that was connected by numerous wires. A series of numbers were pulsating within the device, and it was fixed to her left arm. This is the last. Brother, this is the last thing I can do for you. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.